Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wrestling Omakase. It is episode number 154. We're here for our first non-5 matches episode in quite a while. Not that things are normal right now, especially in the U.S., but we're trying to get back to a little bit of normalcy, especially in Japan with them getting ready to run fan shows in the near future. So we'll be covering current wrestling for a little bit on the free feed. If of course, you missed the 5 matches episodes and you want more of them, we just recorded another one on the Patreon with Nate from the Everything Elite podcast here on the VOW podcasting network. So you can check that out at patreon.com/Wrestling Omakase. That has episode 153 that just went up on this past Saturday, plus 2 more from June with Rich Craich, of course, from the flagship, and with Alan Forel from the PW Torch. It also has my entire series covering every Okada Tanahashi match in order. We've done 11 of those so far. The 11th one just went up Monday, July 6th. So, we're going to be done with that pretty soon and moving on to a new series of matches covered in order, where you'll be able to vote on which one. Myself and one of the guests here today did a New Japan Cup Pick'em. If you want to go back and hear how wrong we both were. And we have Anime Omakase as well, if you want to hear me and the lovely Nicole talk about anime. We have 2 episodes of that up already and a 3rd one coming soon. So tons of cool stuff on the Omakase Patreon. We just hit 50 patrons today as I record. So I want to thank everybody who supported the Patreon and made it, even honestly more successful than I thought it would be. So thank you if you subscribed. I hope you're enjoying it, and come check us out at patreon.com/Wrestling Omakase, and get all the 5 matches content you can handle. The next one for July will be me and Rob Reed from the Voice of Wrestling quiz show, formerly from Brit Red's Roundtable. So that should be fun. But in the meantime, here on the free feed, we're going to be covering the mid-year awards. So I debated, actually on the air, people heard me debate on the air, I guess, whether or not to do this year. And, at the end of the day, I just decided it might be fun to see what the fuck people pick for these awards. So in such a weird and terrible year. I know my picks especially, haven't watched a ton of current wrestling during this empty arena COVID era. So, my own picks are going to be I've watched less current wrestling than in my entire life probably, or at least in many years. So my picks will be probably a little bit weird. But I have a good cross-section here, I think, from the Voice of Wrestling website. So we'll see what they pick. I'm sure many of them actually have watched a lot more of this COVID empty arena stuff. We also have one more guest other than the ones I'm introducing here he's just running a little late, but he'll pop on mid-episode. So I'll definitely let you know, let the listeners know when he is on the episode here. So first of all, hello, welcome back to the podcast. Andy, what's up?
Hey, happy to be back. Not a whole lot's up and doing a whole lot of nothing like everybody else, for the most part. Supposed to go back to work on Friday. I haven't worked in 4 months, so we'll see if that actually happens. It depends on how Oregon's doing, which is not well. So
yeah,
hopefully I'll find out before Thursday if I go back to work. But otherwise, happy to be here and talk to everybody.
Yep. Thanks for coming on. Up next, Paul is back. Hi, Paul.
Hi, John. Yeah, I'm still in Ireland, still kind of mostly staying at home, working from home for the near future. It seems at least in Ireland we have it somewhat under control, where we had, I think, 4 cases today, but like 18 yesterday. It's like weirdly.
Wow! Paul, fucking 4 cases, Jesus! Do you know?
Yeah.
Everybody else in this podcast is from America, buddy. So we got a few more, than Paul.
Slightly 4, yeah. But we're reopening now. Like everything is more or less open again, so we'll see. Hopefully, it won't go up again, but fingers crossed, it will stay under control at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, things are still pretty bad here, but I mean, like, actually in the New York / New Jersey area, things aren't that bad, but the rest of the country, things are pretty awful. So, speaking of the New York area, also a New Yorker. Hi, Taylor.
Hey, how's it going?
Let me plug your podcast too, from Jumping Bomb Audio.
There you go.
Yeah.
You took care of it for me. I just wanted to say, I don't have much to say about what's going on because everyone knows it's still crazy in New York. I just wanted to say, speaking of the Patreon, Alan Forel came on his episode. He trashed me and then went on quiz night and was dominated. And I just want to say that is the curse of Omakase. I am the king, the king guest of Omakase, and you don't come on this program and speak badly about me.
There you go.
Or else you see what happens.
There you go. The king guest. You do have the all-time record still, so I don't even know who. I mean, I guess Jessie's in second place, and she hasn't been on in quite a long time. So up next, we have Thomas coming back on the show. Actually, Thomas might have passed Jessie for second by now. I don't know. It's probably close by now. But hi, Thomas.
Hey, yeah, how are you doing? I haven't been on in a while. I think I was on the last or second to last episode pre 5 matches, so it's good to come back after a few months off.
Yeah, it's been all 5 matches here. So next week we'll be doing New Japan, the Dominion and New Japan Cup final. So it'll be at least a few weeks before we do a 5 matches episode in the free feed again. I have to see what the rest of July looks like, and but yeah, it's definitely been playing it by ear. You know what I mean? I mean, Japan's not like in a bad shape or anything, but there's still like 100 cases a day in Tokyo now. So who knows how long shows or fans will last there? But have to go see what happens, I guess.
Yep. Hoping for the best, obviously, but we'll see.
Finally, the aforementioned guest from the New Japan Cup Pick'em, where again you can access that on the Patreon right now and see how wrong we both were. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, John. Well, you were a lot less wrong than I was. Both of my finalists went out in the first round. So
That's true.
That's how smart I was.
Who were your finalists?
Shingo and Suzuki.
I didn't remember. Yeah, I was doing pretty well for a while, but I had Sonata over Okada in the finals, so obviously my pick already went out. So
yeah, I am doing good. I'm hoping that Minnesota start looking more like Ireland when it comes to COVID cases, because I get married in 5 weeks and I don't want to reschedule everything again.
Yeah, I don't know if that's happening, buddy. It's going to be tough, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Tyler. And I guess with everybody introduced, we can get right into the award picks. As I mentioned, Ricardo will... that's the last person. Ricardo will be joining us, another Voice of Wrestling contributor, as soon as he's able. So, I'll just let him introduce himself then, and he'll slide right in between Paul and Taylor here. So we're just going to go... If you've never heard one of these half-year award episodes before, where it's basically, just what it sounds like. Everything from January through the end of June is eligible. Anything... in all these different categories. I'm doing the exact same categories that we'll have at the end of year awards. So I just think it's, we've done this last year, I believe 2 years in a row. And it's just fun to see what people have through the half year. In normal years, it's fun. This year, it is going to be, I don't know if you want to call it extra fun or not fun at all, but we'll see. So we'll start with the Category B awards, which is one pick each. And if people haven't heard any of these awards episodes before, I structure my awards very similar to the Observer Awards, but I do it with just less categories. But yeah, because, I mean, who gives a shit what book we're reading? I mean, whatever. But the Category B awards...
what is reading?
I don't know. Read a book. Category B awards, one pick each. So we're going to start with all the worst awards, which are like, the obviously just like what is the worst of whatever these things are. I don't know what I'm saying. The worst awards, here's what I want to say right away. Let's get through these quickly, because there was one year, either on the year-end awards or the mid-year, I think it was year-end awards, where we just took forever to get through the worst, and it was like a slog when I listened back to it. So, nobody really wants to hear us say that WWE is bad. Everybody knows that, I think. So we'll just try to get through these as quickly as possible. Definitely don't give a long explanation for these. Just we'll get through them quick. So we'll start with worst weekly TV show. What is your pick for a worst weekly TV show, Andy?
WWE is actually good, but no, I'm just kidding. Worst weekly TV show. I didn't do the obvious. Well, maybe it's not obvious. I don't know. I haven't watched Raw or SmackDown in years, but I was kind of excited initially when NXT went to TV, even though they were trending downwards, and they have been pretty bad. I've only watched a couple of episodes, which is more than I've watched of AEW, but I find NXT's product to be really dreadful because it was once good. So they're my worst weekly TV.
All right, already an off the board pick there, I think. Paul, what do you put for worst weekly TV?
So my vote is actually the same as Andy's for the exact same reasons as well. It's NXT because it used to be good, whereas Raw and SmackDown haven't been good in like at least a decade, probably longer than that. So whereas NXT used to be a genuinely good TV show, and now it's not. So that's why it's the worst this year so far.
All right, Taylor, what do you have here for worst weekly TV?
I don't watch that much bad weekly TV, so I didn't have that many candidates because I don't watch much WWE. So I voted for NWA Power. Just as a show, I think is not really successful in what it's trying to do. And when it comes to my best weekly TV show, I think my best weekly TV show does the things well that NWA Power does poorly.
All right. Thomas, what do you have for worst weekly TV?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Taylor, and I don't really watch much weekly TV or any weekly TV, at least from the U.S. So I just kind of put a pass on this one. I'm sure it's like Raw or something, but I just don't watch it. I don't think I've watched a single Raw match this year. So I have to pass just because I try to avoid bad wrestling. So
Tyler, what'd you put for worst weekly TV?
I put Monday Night Raw. I went a little different avenue than Andy and Paul did. NXT has been okay sometimes. SmackDown's even had some really good matches, like the AJ Daniel Bryan match from a couple weeks ago. But Monday Night Raw has zero redeeming qualities except a loaded roster that's just being wasted.
All right. For worst weekly TV, I put SmackDown. Not that I've watched really any of it, but there was that like amazingly, hilariously bad. Like I watched one episode right before the end of the start of COVID with like The Fiend confronting John Cena, and it was really hilariously terrible. So, maybe that should make it not eligible, but it was really bad. It was just also really funny. And then after that, and during the COVID era, it just seems like they lost their minds, and they did that Jeff Hardy drunk driving storyline. And I did watch that entire segment on Twitter, like, because they put the segment up on Twitter for God knows what reason. And it was, like, one of the worst things I've ever seen with, like, sub-porn level acting from the cops. It was just incredibly terrible. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you can intellectually know the WWE is bad, but until you watch it, you don't really know how bad it's gotten. So, yeah, it's SmackDown. Worst major show, Andy.
Did you say sub porn acting?
Sub porn acting, yeah.
Is that a phrase? I've never heard that phrase before.
Well, it's like below porn acting.
I get it. I'm gonna have to think about incorporating that into my language now.
Oh, okay. So Ricardo just got here in time for the first award. So first of all, Ricardo, you can introduce yourself, and then second of all, what's the worst weekly TV show?
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me. This is my Omakase debut. Actually, I'm Ricardo Gallegos. I write about lucha mainly at the Voices of Wrestling. And what's the worst TV show? Any WWE show can qualify for that, but I guess like the one that I don't watch any of them, but the one that sounds the worst is SmackDown. You know, all this Bray Wyatt shit and Seth Rollins. It sounds like a nightmare to be honest.
Yeah, I think Seth is Raw, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It's all fucking terrible. But yeah, yes. So okay. So I'm glad you made it just in time for the first award. That was good timing. Woo. All right, so Andy, what is the worst major show?
For me, it was easy, and I know that the worst awards on Omakase are usually WWE Suite, but WrestleMania Part 1 was honestly one of the worst shows I've ever seen. So that was the first day of it. Part 2 had a couple of things that I actually liked, a couple things I really hated, but the first day of WrestleMania was genuinely terrible.
All right. Paul, what was your worst weekly show?
You mean worst major show?
Oh, worst major show. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I hate to kind of do this again, but I'm doing the same vote as Andy again. I swear I'm not cheating by just picking what he picked, but kind of for the same. It's just been like kind of horrendous, and it was kind of close between WrestleMania Night 2 and Night 1 because I actually think both of them were terrible. But I think Night 1 was just such an overall terrible show that it is like an easy winner here.
Yeah. Ricardo, what would you put for worst major show?
Yeah, it's WrestleMania Night 2 again. That Edge versus Randy Orton match is horrendous. And Drew McIntyre's title win was as dry as possible. And it was horrible to watch. I mean, WWE sucks to watch, but WrestleMania was the full package. No fans, stupid storylines, long matches, horrible performances. It was the worst major show, I think. WrestleMania Night 2.
Yeah, alrighty. And the worst major show, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm the same exact. WrestleMania Night 2 for the reasons that have been covered. There's not much more to say.
And WrestleMania, or I guess worst major show, Thomas.
You're just naming the category, WrestleMania. I'm sure wrestling was bad. I didn't watch it, so I can't vote for that. The worst major show for me was a show actually that John forced me to watch. Big Japan's Stardust Superstars, their 25th anniversary show. It happened on March 16th, and it was in Yokohama Bunka Gymnasium, which is a fairly big building for people that don't know. I think easily promotions can draw over 2,000 fans for it. It was maybe 25% empty at best, and it was a 9-match show. I only had one match.
Well, you mean 25% full, I think.
Right, what did I say?
Yeah, 500 people, I think. Probably.
Yeah, it was 25% full. Yeah. It was a 9-match show. I went over 3 stars on only one match. They had a match where they had a death match where they built the match around a scorpion that was inside of a box, and it was the most boring setup spot, just a sharpshooter with a guy's face in a pit of scorpions. It was there's no action there. It's just okay, you tapped out because you were scared of the scorpions. and it's just not a great show, and there was no one there. I hated John the whole time for making me watch it to come on Omakase.
I'm sorry. We all have to make sacrifices.
No, it was just not a great show. And I know you went to bat for the Daichi Sekimoto match on this show, but I thought that was just quite a long, dull match. And yeah, just Daichi is up and down, but this was not one of his better performances.
Should also add too, for people who might be confused, because obviously a lot of things require 25% capacity or 50% capacity or something. This was when COVID started in Japan, but they were not yet doing any kind of mandatory requirements. So just 25% people showed up because that's all they wanted to show up to this Big Japan show during COVID. So yeah. Tyler, what is the worst major show so far in 2020? Tyler?
There are a lot of different candidates for this show, but it's without a question WrestleMania Night 2 for one reason. just 4 days after the Benoit documentary aired, you had Randy Orton doing a choke spot on Edge with weightlifting equipment. That's all I have to say about that. Just awful. Incredibly awful.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad. For me, for Worst Major Show, so I have not seen any of the WWE COVID pay-per-views, so I cannot give it to WrestleMania or anything else. I went with Elimination Chamber March 8th. It's really not a horrible show as many of the other WWE winners over the years, because it did at least have an awesome Bryan and Gulak match, but like the rest of the show was just pretty damn awful still. I mean, 2 mostly heatless Elimination Chamber matches, including the Tag Chamber, which I couldn't believe people praised. That match was so horrible. A really incredibly terrible AJ Styles against Aleister Black match that went on forever before, being very boring, before just being a setup for The Undertaker to show up, which is like the only thing people cared about on this entire show. Like one of the only things to get a crowd reaction. It just was a really awful show. Like it's pretty rare to have a show with a match you gave 4 1/4 to as your worst major show, but like I said, I haven't seen any of their other empty arena stuff, and the rest of the show is just so horrendous that I think it's still, I think it still qualifies as the worst major show I've seen this year, just by having one awesome match. The Royal Rumble was definitely better, like overall. That was the only other WWE pay-per-view I've seen this year. Okay, so worst promotion. Andy, go ahead. What's your worst promotion for 2020?
Yeah, that's related to my worst weekly TV. Again, going with NXT here. Because they have the talent. They occasionally can have good matches.
That would be WWE. It's just a
brand. Oh, you combine them?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'm specifically looking at NXT, but WWE with a focus on NXT just because of some really, really cringe storylines and everything that's happening at the Performance Center, including some news that broke right before we started recording.
What was the news? Like 30 people have it or something?
Yeah, 30 additional people tested positive. So there you go.
Good shit.
WWE.
Paul, worst promotion.
Yeah, I mean, it is WWE, but I think it's getting to the point as well where I probably don't watch it enough to even vote for it anymore, but I think it was just about on the threshold where I think I can still reasonably vote for it, but I might have to change that vote by the time the year-end awards roll around, because I probably just won't watch enough to vote for it at that stage.
Ricardo, worst promotion?
That's gotta be the evil, racist, the COVID-inducing, the pro-Donald Trump company, WWE. I fucking hate it. I know when people say that it's bad to wish death to WWE because it would be bad for the entire industry, I don't care. I want it to fucking die. All right? And also I want to give a shout out to CMLL, who it's a company that just refuses to evolve. They had 3 months and it was the exact same card, the exact same matches every week, and they are super sexist on there. They are misogynistic, they're xenophobic also. So yeah, shout out to CMLL, but I gotta give my vote to the most evil company out there, WWE.
Taylor, what's your worst promotion pick? I like that Ricardo worked in a second one too. That was good. It's like two of them both suck.
I, like Paul, don't watch a lot of WWE, but I think if you took only non-in-ring related stories about WWE, it would still be the worst promotion in the world between the COVID stuff, but the COVID stuff also buried earlier in the year when they did all that shitty stuff with Martha Hart after the Owen Hart documentary came out. It's like you don't even need to watch the in-ring. The in-ring is bad, but sort of separate from the fact that also the company is terrible.
Yeah.
Don't forget about all the Drake Maverick firing stuff.
Yeah, they fired a ton of people. We don't even no one even talks about that anymore because all the other shit they've done. Thomas, worst promotion.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Taylor and Paul Hall, Ricardo, and it's got to be WWE. Even if I don't watch a lot of their product, it's just so much out of ring stuff, and also I feel like every few weeks I just happen to watch one segment that gets tweeted onto my timeline. And you brought up earlier the car crash segment.
It was so terrible. So bad. I mean, look, it's at least funny bad, but it is so bad.
like legitimately some of the worst acting I've seen in my life. And I watch funny bad movies, on purpose sometimes. So, yeah, it's got to be the Fed, WWE.
The Fed. Tyler, you gonna break this streak here on for worst promotion?
No, it's WWE. I don't really think it's close. The richest company in all of wrestling is laying people off so they can make quarterly profits better. When companies like Ring of Honor and even NWA, they're re-signing people. Like, it's truly despicable and disgusting. Fuck WWE. Ricardo's 100% right. Burn it to the ground, or just get the McMahons out of there and put anybody in charge of booking.
And I will also not break the streak here. I'd love to honestly, but there's I don't know. There's no one else you can pick. I mean, there is no other choice here except WWE.
Well, as of 2 weeks ago, we did have a pretty strong competitor in progress, but before all the scandals broke, I didn't even know they were still a company. So it's a little tricky.
So I definitely went with WWE as well. It's just it's the worst promotion on earth. Everybody else pretty much covered it, and beyond even being terrible at producing a compelling or entertaining show, they're also just terrible human beings that I hope get fucked. All right, so up next, worst feud. We're almost done with the worst here, only 2 left. So Andy, what is your worst feud of 2020?
All right, this is controversial. I don't know if to anyone here, maybe I have some other fellow DDT watchers here. One of the big storylines for the first handful of shows up into one of their big events this year was a feud between Yoshihiko, the Doll, and All Out. And I hated it. And I actually like a lot of Yoshihiko comedy matches, but for whatever reason, I hated every match that Yoshihiko, the Doll, had with All Out. So that's my worst feud of the year.
Wow.
Fuck you, Andy.
I know.
Fuck you.
Everybody mad at Andy. Paul, what is your pick for worst feud so far here in 2020?
Yeah, so I'm continuing my streak kind of on sticking with the same company, and I am going to go for WWE against the health of its employees. Because
it's definitely a bad feud.
Yeah. You may bring up that the wrestlers aren't actually employees and that they're independent contractors, to which I say, should go fuck yourself because they're employees and they should get health insurance.
Yeah, indeed. Ricardo, what is your pick for worst feud so far?
I'm going to AEW versus NXT, the rating feud, because it sucks. It's so sad. It's a very sad feud. Like, they barely do 1 million fans every week, and they're always subtweeting each other. Chris Jericho gets in the conversation. It's so sad. It's a pathetic feud. And also shout out to Edge versus Randy Orton. It's horrible, horrible stuff. The greatest match of all time. Edge being a dickhead on Twitter. And also shout out to, it's not a feud, but it's more of a storyline. The Hijo del Fantasma narco kidnapper storyline that is absolutely offensive.
All right. I agree. The fucking Wednesday Night War sucks. I wish I had thought of that, because it's like, who gives a fuck, Chris Jericho, about your goddamn 18 to 34? Shut up.
Yes. It sucks. It's sad. It's just sad.
Yeah. I mean, you're both losing to guys' grocery games. Like, shut up.
Well, we know Chris Jericho cares about 18-year-olds. So
allegedly.
Allegedly, you're right. Allegedly for 25 years, you're right.
I don't want to get sued, Andy. Thank you.
Okay.
Taylor, what is your pick for worst feud?
Worst feud is wrestling fans versus trying to watch empty arena matches. It's been a tough time. There's been a lot of empty arena. I think every person, I think this way. I think a lot of people, shows or promotions have been trying really hard, but watching some of these empty arena shows is very, very tough. So that's been the hardest thing.
All right. I wish I had come up with a joke answer for this, because apparently everybody else did that. Thomas, what do you have for worst feud?
I have Twitter versus convincing me to watch wildly overhyped WWE matches, because I swear every 3 3/4 star TV match that goes on in that company is suddenly the greatest match of all time, and is like, I need to drop everything and watch it now, and I fall for it every time. and it's just so frustrating. Like, I watched this, Tyler talked about it earlier, this AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan match, which was a very good little match. I'm not going to say it sucked or anything. But I go, and Dave Meltzer gave it 4 3/4 stars, which I guess on the Meltzer scale is like 3 stars now. But any mediocrely good match in that company is suddenly like the new all-time classic, and it's so frustrating.
You know, see, I have a solution for that. I just don't watch them.
I know, but they get me. They always get me. I don't know how.
It's like Taylor and Chocopro and Thomas and Basara.
Ooh.
Basara rules. Oh my god!
Wow, Andy's making a lot of enemies on this podcast.
It's okay. It's also me. It's also me and Noah. So we it's all good.
Of course, I am completely unbiased and never biased towards any wrestlers, especially. So I'm glad we all agree. Tyler, what is your? I can't believe nobody said anything in response to that. Tyler, what is your worst feud?
It's Otis versus Dolph Ziggler. What the fuck is this shit? Like, I don't understand why people like it. Yeah, the kind of weird looking guy gets the good looking girl, but I can see that by turning on Fox late night. Like, I don't care.
The Mandy's.
Mandy's.
It's just stupid.
Honestly, Tyler, I thought that was last year, so that's how long the year's been. And now I'm realizing that big spot in Kiss was the Royal Rumble. So, yeah.
That was one of the best parts of WrestleMania Night 2. That's how bad that show sucked.
So for worst feud, I just went with The Undertaker versus AJ Styles. It just seemed pretty stupid from what I could make out. It seemed to just involve Undertaker making AJ look like a moron at every opportunity, and then beating him in a match that, like, I didn't watch it, so I can't tell you if it was good or not, but I sure as hell know that I am tired of people talking about it. So, and then he retired. So fuck that stupid feud.
Also, I just remembered the Street Profits versus the Viking Raiders feud. It seems like horrible. They're playing basketball, they're throwing axes, they are battling ninjas. It's also one of the worst storylines and feuds of all time, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good pull too. I don't I haven't seen a single second of it, so I can't comment on that one even. But it does seem pretty terrible. All right, so our final worst category here: worst match of the year. What do you have here, Andy? Andy, worst match of the year.
Sorry, you cut out on my end.
Oh.
We're all good though. Worst match of the year?
Yeah.
Ricardo just alluded to it. It's a match that I had to Google and see if it actually happened because it's not on Cage Match, but from Backlash. I believe it was from Backlash, the Viking Raiders versus the Street Profits, which was far and away the worst cinematic match I've ever seen of all these various cinematic matches. Just like 35 minutes of nonstop bad humor. From 2 excellent tag teams.
I refuse to watch that. I've heard people are like, "Oh, you have to see it." I'm like, actually, I don't, and I'm never going to.
Yeah, so. I think I don't really like the things like the Bray Cena one or the Undertaker AJ one or Edge Orton. Any of these things, a lot of them are pretty bad, but I can understand people's getting value out of them in different ways. This one, I think, honestly, is no one likes it. I think it's sub Fiend Rollins from last year, so. I think it's really, really bad.
I think the WrestleJoy people liked it. I remember them tweeting about it. That was one of them. Wow, you're really committed to the gimmick.
Wow.
Paul, what is your worst match of 2020 so far?
Yeah, so my worst match, there have actually been plenty of options there, but I decided to go with Johnny Gargano against Tommaso Ciampa from the 8th of April on NXT. In the empty arena match that ended with Candice turning heel and hitting Ciampa and Gargano in the balls, and just overall just being an excessively long slog that just didn't end, and it just continued this horrendous feud of 2 wrestlers that I actually used to really like and have turned on completely just based on this terrible, terrible, never-ending feud.
Wait, why did she kick Gargano on the balls? Isn't that her husband?
Yeah, but he wore a cup, so he wasn't hurt by it. It wasn't swerve, you see? It's a swerve, bro.
Why is this company so fucking terrible? Jesus. Ricardo, what was your worst match of the year?
Gargano versus Ciampa is my number 2. I hated it. But number 1 would be Edge versus Randy Orton. Taylor already talked about it.
The WrestleMania one or the Backlash?
The WrestleMania one, yes. Yeah. You know, the weightlifting sequence. How could you do that 1 or 2 weeks after the Benoit documentary? It's so dumb. And also the match kept going and going and going. And I think it's actually the longest WrestleMania match in history. And it was very bad. It didn't have anything. It was just 2 guys hitting each other with no purpose. There was no flow. It was so stupid and long. And I hated every second of it.
Wait, it was the longest WrestleMania match in history?
Yeah, I think so.
How long was it?
Let me check. I think it was 37 minutes or something.
Wow. 37-minute empty arena match. Why are they... Okay. I feel like we're going to repeat ourselves over and over again. Why are they so bad?
They're so bad. They are so... Let me check. It's... where the fuck is it? 39 minutes.
Jesus. Yeah. Okay. That does sound horrible. I'm glad I didn't watch it. Taylor, what is your worst match of 2020 so far?
So there was a brief period during quarantine where all the major U.S. companies decided, seemingly unanimously, to attempt to become DDT. AEW did a fairly good job at it. WWE did a terrible job at it, and the height of that was the Money in the Bank match from the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which feels a little bit like, you know, trying to do a DDT match, but like if you went to see a stand-up comedian and the thing that you got out of it is that the people laugh based on how they walk around the stage and not the jokes that they tell. There's a lot of like, look, a person has appeared. That's the joke. Here we go. And then, of course, highlighted by 2 people being thrown off the roof to their death, supposedly, which was later turned out that they just were thrown onto a lower level of the building or something. But just an awful, terrible, total misunderstanding of what makes that type of match enjoyable and fun to watch.
So, of course, Omakase listeners will know I almost made myself watch that match when I put it as a joke option on the Patreon, or not the Patreon, on the Omakase 5 matches free episode with Murder Brian, of course, which was really something. Thank God Okada Shibata pulled it out. I still have not seen that one either, and I hopefully will go to my grave never seeing that one. Thomas, what is your worst match of the year so far?
Yeah, this was a tough one for me just because I try not to watch bad wrestling. But I ended up going with Sami Callihan versus Tessa Blanchard. Sami Callihan just is an awful wrestler. And this was like the day or 2 days after Tessa Blanchard got canceled on Twitter. And it was just, and she won the title in what was supposed to be this big moment. And it was just not a good match. And yeah, Sami Callihan sucks. So that's my worst match.
And let's see, Tyler, what is your worst match of 2020?
I just want to say first that I vehemently disagree. I love that Tessa and Sammy match. Thomas, you're wrong. Anyways, worst match, Nia Jax, Kairi Sane from June 1st on Monday Night Raw. The match where Jax threw Kairi Sane right into the stairs, and I think it gave her a massive concussion. Nia Jax is awful, should never be in a wrestling ring, and get her off TV.
All right. And for my worst match of the year pick, so I haven't seen pretty much any of this horrible WWE shit. So my pick is Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian versus Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky from All Elite Wrestling Dynamite on May 27th. It is the worst match I've seen all year. I saw people in the Slack try to argue with me that it wasn't that bad, but it was like Havoc. It was only like 12 minutes, so it's not like it dragged or anything. But like Havoc and Sabian were seemingly trying to one-up each other in some kind of competition to be more comically terrible than the other at selling. Sabian especially seems to think selling is like, act like you're mildly constipated, and it's just really terrible. So that was the worst wrestling match I have watched so far in 2020. I'm sure all this WWE shit was much worse, but like I haven't watched any of it, thankfully. The best weekly television show, the final category B here, and we're finally in the best here. So again, this is only just one pick. So what is your pick for best weekly TV show, Andy?
Yeah, so on my worst Feud, I mentioned this company, and a Feud that kind of highlighted a lot of the early shows. But I think the 8 weekly TV shows that DDT has done recently, semi-recently, over the past, 10 or 11 weeks, has been my favorite weekly wrestling. So DDT TV show kind of gives me a feeling back like the old Maji Manji TV show that they did a couple of years ago. So that's my favorite weekly TV show.
Andy, you have redeemed yourself.
Yes.
And John, isn't this supposed to be the Manji Manji Memorial Best Weekly TV Show Award?
It is the Manji Memorial Best Weekly TV Show Award. Paul, what is your pick for Best Weekly TV Show?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little behind in my DDT watching, so I can't vote for this one. So I'm going to vote for really just about the only weekly TV show that I regularly watch and like, and that would be AEW Dark. Because it's nice and freely available on YouTube. So I watch it every Tuesday before I go to sleep, and yeah, it's a nice show. So pretty much all I can say on it.
Okay. Ricardo, what's your pick for best weekly TV show?
So I was a little burnt out of wrestling during the first 2 months of 2020, but the only thing that really kept me entertained was NWA Power. It was easy to watch, free on YouTube. Nick Aldis was fantastic in every promo. And they also got a bunch of interesting storylines, and Ricky Starks was super entertaining. So yeah, NWA Power is my weekly TV show.
All right. Taylor, what's your best weekly TV show pick?
So my pick is the AEW A show. That would be AEW Dark, which is better than Dynamite. To me, I voted NWA Power worst weekly TV show. I think NWA Power is so slovenly wanting to reproduce the 1980 sort of territory wrestling that it often devolves into parody and sort of eye-rolling cringy stuff. Whereas I think AEW Dark has sort of become the modern studio wrestling. It's mostly just matches with jobbers. The storylines involve pretty much exclusively people on the very bottom rung of the company. But I think they've been fun storylines. They've really hit their groove. Taz and Excalibur, I think, are a good commentary team for that setting. So that, to me, has been one of the highlights of the year, AEW Dark.
All right. Thomas, give me your best weekly TV show.
So I don't really watch any much U.S. wrestling, at least. So this is often a category I struggle with, but because of the COVID, I actually had 2 candidates for this between the DDT TV show and All Japan's weekly pro wrestling broadcast. And I thought they both were very good, but I thought DDT, especially on the undercard, it's just a much deeper roster than All Japan, and so the shows were just a much easier watch from start to finish. And it had a tremendous ongoing story with Masato Tanaka defending against the various Anytime Anywhere Gauntlet challengers, especially a quick 12-minute main event surprise banger against Yukio Sakaguchi that I went 4.25 stars on. That was maybe my favorite match of MC Arena. So yeah, DDT TV show is the winner for me. Yeah.
All right. And Tyler, what do you have for best weekly TV show?
I think it's safe to say I am the AEW apologist of the group because my favorite best TV show is Dynamite.
Well, we had 2 different votes for an AEW show, just not that one.
Yeah,
there are 2 votes for Dark.
Hey, Dark has been fantastic, but as simple and easy as it is to watch, and it does have some fun little storylines, it doesn't really have anything huge. And while there are a lot of problems with Dynamite and this weird obsession of everybody needing to use a car every single week, I think it's been really well done. They've built stories, they've grown characters, and that they're really positioning themselves to build for the future while still utilizing guys from the present. And like what Jericho's been able to do for guys like Sammy Guevara, Orange Cassidy, elevating them to a point where they might be money drawing stars down the line, I think has been really good, and I really enjoy it.
All right. I will say about Dynamite, I think the idea that their atmosphere is good during COVID is like one of the most overrated things that I hear people say repeatedly. Like, especially like people keep comparing. Like I think really I say people. I'm really talking about Joe Lanza, where he compares it to the New Japan Empty Arena stuff a lot, and it's like the Dynamite Empty Arena to me sounds almost as fake as the WWE one, where like these people you just hear these people in the background yelling, and you know that they're paid to be there, and they're always yelling at the exact right time. I don't know, it just comes off super fake to me. Well, I'd almost rather have like at least the announcers screaming to make it like New Japan. What they did, but they just told their announcers to scream way more, and that sounds way more natural to me than putting a bunch of your wrestlers at ringside and having them make like fake crowd noise. But it's still better than WWE's fake crowd noise. I mean, how could it not be? But anyway, what will I say about what's my pick for best weekly TV? I went with DDT TV show pretty much just by default. I don't even think it was that good. But it's the only one I've really watched every week, and it did have the Endo Higuchi match I thought was awesome, so that's pretty much my pick. I mean, I've watched a few episodes of Dynamite, and like I said, the atmosphere and everything else, it didn't grab me at all. The New Japan Cup stuff I really liked, but I don't really think that counts as a weekly TV show, even though it's been weekly. So DDT wins.
I think one thing that people in a small bubble people are talking about, but is kind of getting lost in the shuffle, is Jun Akiyama's last 5 weeks in DDT. Obviously, the business side of it's been talked about, but his actual quality of work is this big bully, which DDT often lacks, has been super refreshing for him and for the company, where he's kind of working as this coach, but he kicks everyone's ass. So that was kind of the thing that really pushed DDT over a couple of other options for me is the Akiyama goon storyline.
Yeah, I agree. I think that has been definitely one of the highlights of DDT. Okay, so best major show, and now we're going to the category A awards here. So for these, you'll be given 3 picks. I've discovered doing these shows over the years that it's better to just have. I used to do it where we do everybody's third pick, then everybody's second pick, then everybody's first pick, but that takes forever, and I have to ask the same question over and over again. So I'll just go to each of you. You'll give your top 3. Try to give it in reverse order, so give third place, then second place, then first place. So we'll start with you, Andy. Give me your top 3 for best major show.
All right, so for best major show, I was really coming on here thinking that I would have some kind of off the wall picks, but there's actually been an actual lack of what we call major shows. A lot of weird kind of adaptations to COVID, obviously, with things like All Japan and Noah doing kind of almost TV shows, almost weekly shows, where they're really truncated versions, and similar to the New Japan Cup. I don't view those as major shows. So for my third pick, I have Wrestle Kingdom Day 1, Wrestle Kingdom 14 Day 1. That was I don't remember what was all on that one.
January 4th.
January 4th. I'm just thinking what was the undercard matches on that one. So that's Hiromu versus Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
And Moxley versus Archer on top or below the Naito, Jay White, and Okada Bushi matches. Mm-hmm. All of those are really good. I thought it was a typical Wrestle Kingdom. Maybe not my favorite Wrestle Kingdom, but still a good one. My second favorite major show happened on the same day, just before or I guess actually the exact same time as Wrestle Kingdom 14, and this was Noah and Kurikan Hall New Sunrise. Noah also did a 2-day event. Basically, they had this New Sunrise and the reboot, and I was definitely the high person on New Sunrise. This was the one that had Shiozaki versus Kiyomiya on top, and that's one of my favorite matches of the year. But also had a handful of other really great matches. So that was my number 2, and number 1 I have Wrestle Kingdom Day 2. Which I think we'll get into why here in the future, but really the top 4 matches on that were all super excellent, some of my favorite matches of the year. So even if I'm lower on New Japan, I thought Wrestle Kingdom Day 2 was excellent.
All right. Paul, give me your picks for best major show.
Yep. So my number 3 is New Japan's New Beginning in Osaka show, which was main evented by Kenta versus Tetsuya Naito. And I thought that was pretty, like, top to bottom was a pretty solid show, but I think that main event kind of puts it over the top a bit for me. I think that storyline was just tremendous, where Kenta attacked Tetsuya Naito after the main event, and he robbed him of doing the LIJ rally at the end of the show, and just the heat in the building at the moment was just amazing. And also, the match itself turned out to be really good as well, which, given the state that Kenta has been in now, isn't necessarily always a given. But I think so far in New Japan, when he's been like tasked with like stepping up to like a high level, he has delivered, and he definitely did in this match. And of course, Naito was excellent. So that's my number 3. My number 2 is night 1 of Wrestle Kingdom on January 4th. That's again, it's another like very, very good show, top to bottom. Probably like the highest attendance, or the show with the highest attendance in the world this year, most likely. I don't know if the Rumble drew more or not, but just a very good show overall. And then my number 1 is night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom, where it also had my match of the year as well. But I'm not going to give that away for now, although I would assume that should be relatively obvious.
Yeah.
That's true, actually. Wait, since Wrestle Kingdom didn't have, or since WrestleMania didn't have fans, is Wrestle Kingdom Night 1 actually the highest attended show of the year?
It depends on what the Rumble drew, because that was in a big stadium too. I don't remember what the Rumble drew. It should be close either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt there will be anything approaching it this year at this stage that will get close to either of those.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, go ahead and give me your top 3 for Best Major Show, Ricardo.
My number 3 is the second night of Wrestle Kingdom. Just a great night of action. I liked really much the Zack Sabre Jr. versus Sanada match, the Goto Kenta match, Jericho against Tanahashi, and of course the main event. And my number 2 major show of the year is AAA, Nacemos para Luchar, on February 8th in Querétaro. This was a fantastic show. I got 3 matches over 4 stars. There was a fantastic Hijo del Vikingo, Puma King, and Rey Horus versus Los Mercenarios match. Psycho Circus versus the Nuevo Poder del Norte in a very fun brawl. And also Los Ingobernables versus the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid. This was a tremendous show and one of the best AAA shows overall I've seen in a while. And my number 1 pick is New Japan Wrestle Kingdom Night 1. Will Ospreay versus Hiromu, Okada versus Ibushi, Naito versus White, the first Liger return match with all the men coming out. That was very fun. So that's my show of the year.
All right, Taylor, what do you have for top 3 here for Best Major Show?
So my number 3 show is Ice Ribbon, number 1029. Featured. It was a really fun show. It was at Korakuen Hall. Featured 2 really great matches. The conclusion of a big, long-running story with Suzu Suzuki returning to take on Tsukasa Fujimoto, and a title match with Maya Yukihide versus Hiragi Kurumi. I just think a really fun show. They also had an card 6-person tag with the Joint Army. Just thought it was a fun show. Lots of good matches up and down the card. My number 2 is DDT Peter Pan Night 2. I think it had a lot of... I actually didn't really think very much of DDT Peter Pan Night 1, but Night 2 I thought was very strong. It had the Harashima Murafuji tag. It had Nautilus versus Strong Hearts, and of course the main event of Masato Tanaka versus Endo. So overall, I thought it was a really well-wrestled show that I really enjoyed. And my number 1 show, very off the beaten path, is the Gake Pro Nobody show, a show that had no fans, no announcers, no referees, no wrestlers, and only 1 cameraman. If that sounds interesting to you, it is up on Wrestle Universe. Just a totally out there, thinking outside the box type of show that I really, really enjoyed.
All right. I don't know if that should count, but sure.
Redefining major.
What is major? What is major in 2020?
Well, I didn't include the Ricardo's number to the AAA show because I thought that was just like a regular TV show. But yeah, I get it. I mean, that's a very Taylor pick, and I appreciate it. I still have to watch that.
Who can define what's major in my heart?
Indeed. Thomas, what do you have here for your best major shows?
Number 3 for me is a show that Andy already mentioned, Noah's New Sunrise in Cork and Hall. That Go versus Kaito main event is one of my favorite matches of the year. And it was a shocking result. And I remember just waiting for that show to come out on VOD, and it was over-delivered on all expectations. The Hayata and Ogawa match from that show obviously is very hyped. And then an under-hyped match is the Sugiura Kitamiya semi-main event, which I thought was very excellent as well. So that's my number 3. An excellent show. Number 2 for me is All Japan's New Year's Wars 2020 Day 2. A good show up and down. It had Yuma Aoyagi getting the pin in a tag match, which was a huge moment for him. And then later, after an excellent main event between Kento Miyahara and Jake Lee, turning on Kento Miyahara after that match. Also, Susumu Yokosuka against Hikaru Sato for the junior title was on that show. And both those two aforementioned matches are in my top 7 for the year. So an excellent show, the only show to have 2 matches on my top 10 other than Wrestle Kingdom Night 1. And it holds a special place in my heart because VOW's own Jojo Remy took me out for some ramen with John Pollock from Post Wrestling after that show. So a good memory also just surrounding that show. So shout out to Jojo. And then number 1 for me was Wrestle Kingdom Night 2. Just one of the greatest experiences that I've been to as a wrestling fan. Certainly the greatest match I've seen live between Naito and Okada there. And maybe just one of the greatest matches of all time, period. So, and obviously a great show up and down, but that match is clearly the highlight. So yeah.
All right. Tyler, what are your picks here for best major show?
All right. To answer a question earlier, actually, the Royal Rumble is the biggest attended show of the year. They got 42,000 people in Minute Maid Park. So pour one out for New Japan.
42,000 losers.
Exactly. My number 3 show of the year is I gotta find on my sheet. Double or Nothing. I had I believe 5 4-star plus matches on that show, including a match that was it's debatable if it was even a match or not, but I absolutely loved it. Number 2, Wrestle Kingdom Night 1 from January 4th. 2 5-star matches. And just even with the 2 random 6-man tags, everything on that show delivered. And it was just very fun watch. And then number 1, Wrestle Kingdom Night 2. Naito finally gets his moment, and then one of the best angles I've ever seen, Kenta just coming in, being an absolute prick and ruining everything, was probably the best way the show could have ended.
All right. And then for my best major show picks, I have in third a pretty out there pick, I think. I went with Stardom No People Gate from March 8th at Korakuen Hall. It was just a strange blast of a show to me. Like, it has a really underrated Iwatani Kashima main event, a strong semi-main tag title match, and this really awesome battle royal that was a lot of fun. It's my favorite show of the Empty Arena era that I've seen. And again, I haven't seen a ton of them, so that's definitely the one I enjoyed the most. Number 2, I have New Japan Wrestle Kingdom Night 2. Obviously it has my, I don't think I'm spoiling anything here to say it has my match of the year. And, it has but besides that, it also has a really strong undercard. I like Jericho Tanahashi a lot. Goto and Kenta I thought was really underrated. There's just a lot of cool stuff on that card. And then number 1, I actually went with New Beginning in Osaka on February 9th in Osaka-jo Hall. I just really love this show with an awesome top 3. I thought Moxley Suzuki was awesome. Hiromu and Dragon Lee I seem to be the high person on, if anything. I love that match. And then obviously Naito Kenta I thought was awesome. Even has like a great little Osprey Okada, Zack Taichi tag match like hiding on the undercard. If only that White Sonata match was a little better, I'd feel slightly more confident about it holding off the rest of the year, even if we get more real shows, but who knows, maybe it will, I don't know. But it's a really awesome show, and one of the reasons why it made me sad when New Japan went away not that long after that, because I really like what they were doing. Okay, so best promotion. Give me your 3 picks for best promotion, Andy.
Awesome. Hold on. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Sorry. I switched tabs. So best promotion for me, I think, based on some of the other awards we've given and having a pretty strong New Japan Cup coming back, I actually haven't seen any New Japan between Wrestle Kingdom and the New Japan Cup. So the month and a half, I guess, that they ran towards the New Beginning tour, I haven't seen. So they're not on my list. My number 3 is AAA. Ricardo talked about a show, and there was a couple of other good shows earlier on in the year. And I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is Lucha Fighter, which was just a 4-episode show they had right towards the beginning of COVID era. And so AAA is my number 3 promotion of the year. They were my promotion of the year last year. Number 2, the promotion I watched the most of, the only promotion where I watch everything, is Pro Wrestling Noah. They have had some bad booking and some bad breakups and not the best video production, but I think I've had a lot of enjoyment from their actual matches. So they're my number 2. And then my number 1, often the front runner here for me, is DDT. I think they just are always in their own lane and can kind of always just do whatever they want, whenever they want. And that makes them unique. And I always just enjoy watching their shows, even if they have had a slightly down year in ring.
All right. And go ahead and give me your top 3 here, Paul, for best promotion.
Yeah. So my number 3 is Choco Pro or Gotta Move. I'm not sure which one you want to count there as the promotion. It's just they have done a tremendous job kind of capitalizing on like a bad situation, essentially, where I think they probably have like more momentum now than they've probably had previously. They've always been like a very niche promotion, but I think, and they're still a very niche promotion, but I think they've managed to kind of break out like with a lot more international fans this year. And they have done a couple of like very interesting storylines, and they've had a couple of like very good matches as well. So that's my number 3 promotion. My number 2 is All Japan this time. I think All Japan overall has done the best job with the empty arena stuff, where they just managed to figure out how to shoot it, how to lay out the matches, and just kind of how to build it, where, again, they had like a bit more storylines than we would normally maybe see in Japanese wrestling. And obviously kind of bringing in Enfant Cerebus has been a breath of fresh air. I just think that this year they haven't kind of peaked as high as they normally did. So that's why they didn't make my top spot. My top spot, despite them kind of almost taking a third of the year off, is New Japan, quite simply because it's the promotion that has peaked the highest for me. And that makes it kind of an easy vote for me as the number 1.
All right. Ricardo, go ahead and give me your best promotion.
So my number 3 is DDT. Despite some early empty arena boring shows, I think I've had a blast watching it. Masato Tanaka's championship reign was outstanding. Tetsuya Endo has been very good. Eruption, the Saki Akai 7-match series. DDT has been very, very good this year. And number 2 is New Japan Pro Wrestling. Just Wrestle Kingdom, 2 outstanding shows. The New Beginning series. I have actually despised the New Japan Cup, but before that, New Japan was my top promotion. Number 1 is AAA. They have been tremendous. They have pushed young talent. They are pushing the right people. Mr. Iguana, Vikingo, Mysticis. They have fun storylines going on involving LA Park, joining Los Ingobernables with Rouge. Nuevo Poder del Norte has been absolutely killing it. They've been featuring more minis. They've been having fun matches all around. Their shows have been easy to watch. And as Andy mentioned, the Lucha Fighter tournament has been the best thing for me during this COVID era. It's the best empty arena. They They did 4 shows. The longest match went to 11 minutes. About 70%, 80% of the participants went over. They were fresh matches. But we had Dr. Wagner Jr. versus Ellie Park having a clean finish. That's almost impossible in Mexico, and AAA somehow managed to give us that. And yeah, Lucha Fighter, great shows, one of the best shows of the year, pushing the right stars. They have maintained the star power. They sold tickets well before the COVID era. So yeah, AAA for me, number 1 promotion so far in 2020.
All right. Taylor, what do you got here for best promotion?
So my number 3, I guess, you could debate whether they should have continued running or whether they were pressured. But from an in-ring perspective, I think AEW has done pretty well. I think that they're still a promotion that's sort of growing and figuring out what they're all about. Like I mentioned, Dark, which started as this incredibly boring show with 25-minute matches between mid-carders, has turned into a very fun, breezy watch. They still from time to time have growing pains, but I think that they've done a good job considering all that's been thrown at them this year. My number 2, another vote for AAA. I think they had a very strong year, and I will throw my voice behind Lucha Fighter as well. Super fun, but didn't overstay its welcome either with the matches or, it was only 4 episodes. It's very easy to go back and watch if you want to, without going back and feeling that you have to watch, 10 hours or 15 hours of content. And my number 1 is Gato Move / Choco Pro. I think that they have by far been the best company of the COVID era in terms of presenting a product that's fun to watch. You're not sitting there going, I'm watching a show with no fan, I'm watching a show and no one's there. This is so depressing. I'm thinking about everything going on in the world. They're so interactive with the fan base. They're always providing all this content, which is totally free on their YouTube. And as Paul mentioned, they've had some really great matches and some fun storylines from episode to episode. So they're by far and away my number 1 pick.
All right. Go ahead, Thomas. What's your best promotion picks?
So number 3 for me is New Japan. I couldn't leave them off the list despite them not running for over half of this period, just because of how high they peaked when they were running. Number 2 for me is DDT, and I've already talked about the DDT TV show. Certainly, I think a down year in ring for the promotion. Even before we switched to Empty Arena, I just thought things weren't clicking as much as they had in the past, especially also in Tokyo Joshi. I think that's been kind of a 2-year trend. I think it might be the case that 2018 was a bit of an aberration how good they were that year. I'm hoping that's not the case, but I just feel like they've been kind of on a downward trend since then. But I mean, obviously the positives outweigh the negatives. I think Peter Pan was a pretty good 2-part show, and certainly they've done some amazing things. I said best weekly TV show for them, so I think they've handled Empty Arena pretty well. All right, and my number 1 is All Japan. I think they just booked a really solid, logical story from the beginning of the end of Empty Arena. They started on their first Empty Arena show, bringing in Alphonse Terribles, led by Shotaro Ashino, and throughout the 8 episodes, kind of built them up to be a dominant force in the promotion. And then on the last show, all 3 guys lost their matches to Lee, Suwama, and Koji Iwamoto, 3 mainstays of the promotion, which was just a really smart, logically booked storyline. And I'm not sure if Alphonse are staying around or not, but either way, I think they got them over, and they also put over 3 guys that are going to be staying with the company no matter what. So it was a very well booked sort of arc during Empty Arena. And then also during the pre-COVID era, they were excellent. I loved the Suwama Kento match, and a very surprising result. And also, of course, I mentioned my number 2 show of the year was that January 3rd show with Lee and Kento, and also Susumu and Hikaru Sato, which was, I think, probably the most underrated match of the year. So yeah, and the Carnival's rescheduled, so I do think even with New Japan kind of having, you would think New Japan, even though they've had, kind of whatever the reverse of a head start is compared to the rest of the promotions, because they didn't run Empty Arena, I think All Japan has a chance to, stay ahead just with the carnival being rescheduled and everything. I'm excited to see where they go from here.
All right. Thomas, give me your best... just dead. Tyler, give me your best promotion picks.
All right. Number 3 for me is All Japan. I've kind of been popping in and out, and everything I've seen I've really enjoyed. Starting from the Kento Jake Lee match in January, as Thomas just mentioned, and continuing through the Empty Arena storyline with Infants Terrible. I'm really interested to see what they do with it moving forward, considering they just beat all 3 guys right before they get fans. And as Thomas mentioned, it really got over. So the fact that they did that show without fans kind of worries me long term for what Infants Terrible will be in All Japan. But we'll see. Crazier things have happened. My number 2 is AEW. I disagree with John's take on the AEW Empty Arena aesthetic. I think it feels natural. I like that there's just wrestlers on the outside. It doesn't feel as forced as they perceive it to be, but everybody's got different opinions, and that's okay. I like how everything's been booked. Cody bringing the TNT title and making it feel like 1980s territory wrestling while still adopting a more modern style of wrestling, even though it's Cody and he's not the most exciting wrestler ever. I think has been really fun. And then utilizing guys like Jake Roberts and Arn Anderson and Taz in manager type roles has been awesome, because they still bring a lot to the business. And it's been really enjoyable for me to enjoy those guys who I never really got to enjoy at the time. And then number 1 is easily New Japan. Wrestle Kingdom, both nights, they hit it out of the park, and the booking of the double title was fantastic. The Kenta bit at the end of Wrestle Kingdom Night 2 was fantastic, and I will talk more about that later. The Empty Arena aesthetic wasn't perfect. The New Japan Cup has been meh, but it did deliver Suzuki and Nagata, which I gave 4.5, and then Moxley Suzuki was also 4 3/4. I've just enjoyed almost everything New Japan has done, and they're my number 1.
All right, and for my picks, in 3rd place I have Noah. I was loving them early in the year, and during the earliest Empty Arena stuff, I was definitely one of the defenders of that half-hour stare-down match. But you can't ignore they quickly became a slog during COVID. But I didn't really watch a lot of that, so, I put them in 3rd. Hopefully they turned around from here. I have DET in 2nd. I didn't love their Empty Arena stuff, but I was enjoying their year before that, and at least they had one of the highest-end Empty Arena matches in Endo Higuchi from May 2nd that I went 4 1/4 on. And number 1, I put New Japan. Even with all their months off, I definitely enjoyed their January and February, and then their Empty Arena New Japan Cup by far more than any other promotion. So just, those 3 months of New Japan were the best thing in the first half of the year to me. So not really that close. All right. Best feud. Let's start with, at the same order as always. Go ahead, Andy.
All right. Best feud. This one was hard to do. I think we talked about that. All of us have talked about it in chat leading up to this show, that it was hard to think of 3 good feuds, and some, I'm guessing some people have some different ways to interpret it, including myself. I've mentioned that I've really only seen 1 or 2 All Japan shows, but based on GIFs and people, what they're tweeting, and just the general idea of it, I love invasion angles, and so the Enfants Terribles in All Japan gets my number 3 one, just based on my own hype for it, even if I haven't seen much of it, just based on that idea, making the best out of kind of a tragedy of Wrestle 1 closing. Similarly, or perhaps not so similarly, my number 2 feud is actually when Katsuhiko Nakajima went and invaded Wrestle 1, won their title, and was just really had the whole roster kind of gunning for him before losing to Kaz Hayashi at the very end there, or towards the very end there of the promotion. I just thought that was really hot, had people talking about Wrestle 1 more than they had in a long time, so thought that was really good. And my number 1 feud, I don't know if I'll be the only one with this, but It is in DDT, and it is between Yuki Ueno and Tetsuya Endo. They face each other in many different tag matches, and 6-man and 8-man matches, and had one singles match. And this goes back even to December, where Ueno beat Endo in one of the DDT tournaments. I don't remember which one it was, but whatever one happened in December. But he's the next challenger as we talk to Endo's title. So it's been a cool. He's kind of the new young star in DDT Ueno, and he's the current tag champion, and he's got some pinfalls over him. So that's been a really cool booked feud.
All right, Paul, best feud.
Yeah. So my number 3 feud, that's probably a bit of a weird one. As Andy said, everyone was kind of struggling, I think, with this one. And on this one, I went with Yina Mizumori against herself. So it probably requires a little bit of an explanation, I suppose. So basically, on Choco Pro, Mizumori kind of has been one of kind of the focal points of the whole thing. And she essentially, her storyline is her kind of trying to actually figure out what type of wrestler she wants to be. And really kind of her biggest obstacle in figuring that out is herself. So she has kind of faced a number of opponents and she has been successful, but she's also failed on a number of attempts as well. And she's kind of becoming kind of increasingly frustrated with kind of her not being able to properly figure it out. And it is actually still an ongoing storyline, and I'm just kind of fascinated to see kind of how it will end and what kind of the outcome of it will be by the end. Then my number 2, I actually wasn't the biggest fan of kind of the match it led to, but I thought the whole build up to it was tremendous, and that's Go Shiozaki against Kazuyuki Fujita. The match itself, as I said, I wasn't the biggest fan. Obviously, it has kind of the infamous kind of half-hour stare down at the beginning of it, which I think the really deciding factor there is if you watched it live. I think there's a lot more people that watched it live that loved it, whereas I think generally people that watched it on VOD just have been kind of a bit meh on it. But I think the whole build-up of it was tremendous, where Fujita just beats the shit out of the entire roster and just leaves them laying, including Shiozaki in the run-up to it. And then Shiozaki, like, it made me interested as much as you probably could be in a Kazuyuki Fujita match as I really could be in 2020, and I think that alone is a tremendous achievement. And then my number 1 feud of the year is Kazuchika Okada against Tetsuya Naito. I know it was really only one match, and we kind of got like pretty much just the finale of it at the start of the year. But this was just, it's been my favorite feud since it's been brewing for a while now, and that's why it's also my favorite feud of the year, even though it kind of ended right at the start of the year. Maybe. Well, I say that, but we don't know yet the outcome of the New Japan Cup, so Maybe it's not over yet.
Yeah, good point. All right, Ricardo, give me your picks for best feud.
So best feud, again, very tricky this year. I was going to go for Ashino versus All Japan, but their last show booking fiasco bombed me out completely. So number 3 is Congo versus DDT. This was mainly, 3 weeks before DDT. I think it was very well handled. Keno was fantastic in his fire, his intensity, and the match they had against Sanshiro Takagi at Peter Pan Night 1 was very good, was very intense, so that has my vote. Number 2 is Villano Tercero Junior versus Aéreo. These guys have been hating on each other for a couple of years now, but they had their big blow-off match on March, and I'm going to talk more about it later. But yeah, it was very well built, and during 2020 they had a couple of great promo exchanges, some fiery discussions, and it ended up with a tremendous match. And my feud of the year is Kaito Ishida versus Keisuke Okuda from Dragon Gate. So basically, Ishida has been an asshole. He has been having these great matches, but he always wins by cheating with help of the RED faction. He has been a pain in the ass for Okuda. Okuda is this guy, this brawler, this guy that loves to strike, loves to hit you with knees, with punches, and he just wants to kick Ishida's ass, and he's struggling to do so. They face each other at the King of Gate second round match, and Okuda was kicking Ishida's ass, but somehow Ishida managed to get the win by a countout. Then they had an Open the Brave Gate Championship match on a Rainbow Gate, and that was fantastic. It was very intense, very hard hitting, and that's the one that defined this to be my feud of the year so far.
All right. Taylor, what is your 3 picks for best feud?
So my number 3, I don't know if you call it a feud, but it's a storyline where things are happening, and it's, a little bit of a feud, is Allie and QT Marshall versus the Nightmare Family from mostly the AEW Dark episodes. There's some... it hasn't been a feud, as they've mostly been teaming together, but there has been some tension, and it's been sort of an interesting story to watch. My number 2 is Arisa Nakajima versus her old faction, the Selfish Strawberries from Seedling. A fun storyline. Arisa Nakajima was the leader of the Selfish Strawberries, and after her first title match of the year, was attacked by Asuka, not WWE Asuka, the real Asuka from Japan, and kicked out of the group. And that led to a title match between Arisa and Asuka, which was really great at one of Seedling's most recent shows. And my number 1, similar to Paul, although I titled it differently, Yuna Mizumori versus Emi Sakura. But it's the same point. The story of Yuna Mizumori growing, becoming a better worker at the prompting of Emi Sakura, who has really been egging her on in sort of a heelish way, which culminated in a big match at the end of June in Choco Pro. So those are my 3 best feuds.
All right. Thomas, what do you got for best feud? Thomas?
Everyone has been saying just how tough of a category this is this year, just because we haven't had as many shows. So number 3 for me, I struggled to come up with a number 3. I ended up landing on a bit of a under-the-radar pick, Takuya Nomura versus Daichi Hashimoto from Big Japan. Any feud that can get me to subscribe to Big Japan Core is probably a pretty good feud. And I thought the match was really great, and a lot of the build-up tags were awesome. And it's a shame that they're all paywalled behind Big Japan Core. And there are some pirates out there, but they're hard to find, at least relative to the shows that are on Nico. So I wanted to give that feud a shout-out just because I feel like it hasn't gotten the hype it deserved. And Takuya Nomura is just a rising star in the Japanese wrestling scene, and he's going to be amazing one day when he finally wins the title. I feel like he's in my feud of the year the past 3 years, I think, with Hideki 2 years ago and with Okabayashi last year. He's just a great worker. Number 2 for me is Masato Tanaka versus the DDT roster, similarly to Andy's pick of Shotaro Ashino versus the All Japan roster. I just think the Tanaka sort of arc was very well done. He won a title match, or won DDT's Grand Prix for a title match on DDT's last show of 2019. Then he came in and just ran through the roster, beat Chris Brooks, beat Hiroshima for the title. And then seemingly every time he defended the title, people thought he was going to lose, but he beat Konosuke Takeshita. Went into Empty Arena, had some great matches there, including, I think, 2 of the best matches of Empty Arena against Yukio Sakaguchi and Tetsuya Endo, the latter being on Peter Pan. So that was just not really a feud, but just more of a storyline of the DDT roster all teaming up, and you saw like All Out and Damnation supporting each other because they wanted to take the title off of the outsider. I thought that was a really cool story. And number 1 for me, I mean, obviously number 1 would be Master Wato versus Dookie, but that doesn't qualify because it was in July. So number 1 for me instead is, and I'm surprised no one has said this yet, it's Tetsuya Naito versus Kenta from New Japan. I'm the high man on the match. I guess I think that's wise because the match was pretty divisive, but I loved their match together. And the angle after Tetsuya Naito's win at Wrestle Kingdom, where Kenta attacked him, it legitimately got me angry in a way that I don't think any angle has ever gotten me angry. And so for that reason, I think it's the feud of the year. By a pretty wide margin.
All right. And finally, Tyler, give me your picks for best feud.
Absolutely. My number 3 feud is going to be a little off the wall. It's going to be rational wrestling fans versus defenders of the Fiend.
Okay.
Anybody who defends the Fiend is ridiculous. He's awful, and that's all I'll say about that. Number 2, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley. I thought this was really well built. As myself, kind of getting used to the structure of the quarterly pay-per-views, seeing how Jericho tries to, kind of play cult leader and get Jon Moxley to join the Inner Circle, and even bribing him with the really expensive sports car, and then a continuing storyline with Moxley keeping the sports car, Moxley getting his eye poked out, and then using that in New Japan canon for weeks on end. And the build there and Moxley taking the title at Revolution, I thought was excellent. And then number 1, I am with Thomas, a man of good taste, Kenta Naito, far and away for me the best feud of the year. The angle at Wrestle Kingdom was fantastic, getting 30,000 people who were just absolutely thrilled for the fact that Naito got his moment, just booing the living shit out of Kenta, and him just loving every second of it. The lead up to the match at Dominion, while the match at Dominion was loaded with a lot of interference, I thought was really good. Great storyline considering Kenta just can't go as well as he could back in his Noah days. And then Naito just being as great as Naito is, just was the perfect foil for Kenta. Really established him as a babyface in this feud, and it was just excellent throughout.
All right, and for best feud, I also put Shotaro Ashino against All Japan in third, even though I wasn't super into the shows. I could get the feud worked on a certain level, and there wasn't a lot of options here, honestly. Second, I went with a pick I'm surprised nobody else picked, which was Moxley versus Suzuki from New Japan. I thought when Suzuki came out to interrupt Moxley at the Dome, that's probably my favorite moment of 2020 so far, other than Naito winning. Like, that's just it was such a cool moment when he like came out to his full theme song in the middle of the Dome, and like Jon Moxley was like freaking out in the ring, and it made perfect sense too, since like Moxley had like DDT'd Suzuki in the process of going after Archer back at Power Struggle. So I liked how they really like brought it all, this thing that could have been nothing, like a nothing moment or just something that happened ended up meaning something, which, I always appreciate that kind of thing. And I liked the match a lot too at New Beginning in Osaka. And number 1, I went with Tetsuya Naito against Kenta. People pretty much covered it, but the moment at the end of the Dome was such a big deal. And then, not only, it's one of the few feuds this year that you can say drew money, because they sold out Osaka-jo Hall for the first time in the middle of, right before the first time they've run Osaka-jo Hall for New Beginning in Osaka, which was not a guarantee by any stretch. It did come down a little bit to the wire. But, they sold it out back in the time when you could sell out buildings. So that's my number 1 feud of the year. Let's go ahead to Most Outstanding Wrestler, because I'd like to keep Most Outstanding and Wrestler of the Year separate. We only have 4 categories left here. So Most Outstanding Wrestler, just in ring, nothing else considered. What are your picks here, Andy, for Most Outstanding Wrestler so far in 2020?
Yeah, for Most Outstanding for me, I have a hard time, especially this year. I have a hard time every year separating Most Outstanding and Wrestler of the Year. Every year they're often pretty similar, and this year it's even harder, I think, but we'll see a little bit of difference. My number 3 is Go Shiozaki. He's had, I think, his title win against Kiyomiya at the beginning of the year. His defense against Fujita was really good, and his defense against Akatoshi Saito was also really good. Akatoshi Saito and Kazuyuki Fujita had really good matches this year with Go Shiozaki. That speaks for itself to me. And he's been excellent in multi-mans and as part of Access as well. So he's my number 3. My number 2, and this is based mostly off of the 2 matches right there at the beginning of the year on January 4th and January 5th, is Kazuchika Okada. I ranked them just a little. It could have been him or Naito, but I think also a couple of the matches here in the New Japan Cup put Okada ahead for me. Not the Hiromu match, which I'm maybe the lowest person on in VOW on that match, but he still is number 2 for me. Just had the highest peaks of anybody. And my number 1 is, I think everyone probably knows, I've been pretty vocal about how great he's been this year, is Katsuhiko Nakajima. He's had 3 4.5-star singles matches this year, at least, and a few others that are really good, and I think he's been excellent. So Nakajima is my number 1 most outstanding.
All right. Paul, give me your most outstanding wrestler pick so far for 2020.
Yeah. My number 3 pick is Mei Suruga. She is far and away the best worker in Got to Move, and she kind of has continued that this year as well. It's still kind of baffling to think about that she's really only like 2 years of experience. She's had some tremendous matches so far, one of my favorite of which I will actually talk about later, so I'm just going to keep it there. Then my number 2 is Tomohiro Ishii. It's kind of a safe pick, I suppose, but he has been tremendous both kind of when New Japan was running normally, as well as kind of now in the empty arena. He has delivered, I think, some of the best performances of the empty arena shows that I've seen. And the only one that kind of was better than him at kind of empty arena wrestling, at least to me, was Hiromu Takahashi, who has had some absolute bangers in the empty arena setting. As well as kind of even before that had some excellent matches where I think it's almost been kind of forgotten that he had another tremendous match with Ryu Lee, because of course he did. And just overall, just a great body of work so far, and I'm sure he will continue that in the second half of the year as well.
All right. Give me your most outstanding wrestler picks, Ricardo.
Okay, very difficult, but my number 3 would be Shingo Takagi. I think his matches against Hiroki Goto, Tomohiro Ishii, and recently Show were absolutely outstanding. He's been a joy to watch. During the 6-man title defenses, he's been easily the highlight of every single match out of them. So yeah, number 3 is Shingo Takagi. Number 2 is Masato Tanaka. He's been a joy to watch. I think his KOD Openweight Championship reign was very good. Matches against Harashima, Mao, Takeshita. I'm missing one. Oh, of course, when he recently lost against Endo, it was one of the best empty arena matches so far. So yeah, Masato Tanaka has been killing it. And he also had a couple of great 0-1 matches. And my most outstanding wrestler is Naruki Doi. He's the Dreamgate champion. He had 2 very, very good title defenses against Casey in January, I think, and against Susumu Yokosuka before the pandemic hit. And he was the MVP of the King of Gate tournament. He had very fun matches with Big R Shimizu, with Kaito Ishida, with Kai, and I think he has been a joy to watch. He's been hitting on all cylinders, and Naruki Doi is my most outstanding wrestler.
All right. Taylor, give me your most outstanding wrestler picks for 2020 so far.
All right, number 3 is Mei Hoshizuki from Marvelous. She is a rare wrestler who never seems to give any less than 100% during every moment of every match I've seen her in. Just some incredible matches this year that I'm sure most people have not seen. Just hard-hitting. We often think of sort of when matches are hard-hitting, they are, shoot-style matches are the only type of matches that can be hard-hitting. But Mei Hoshizuki has some of the hardest-hitting matches I've seen, just kicks, strikes, things like that, and I think she's had a great year. My number 2, and if this gets me booted from this podcast forever, so be it. Kenny Omega in AEW. There's been a lot of noise about how his Google searches are down. People aren't searching for him on Google as much. I don't really give a shit about any of that. He's having great matches in all types of different settings. He had a great match on a boat with Riho, an intergender tag match with a wrestler I despise in Kip Sabian. Dragged a good match out of him, unbelievably. A great match with Pac. Obviously, the tag with Hangman Adam Page, the Stadium Stampede. I just think far and away he's had a really great year. And my number one wrestler is Yuna Mizumori. As I talked about, she was in my number one feud. She's had so many great matches for Choco Pro. 2 last person standing matches that were great, considering I'm not really a fan of that stipulation. She had a really good Iron Woman 30-minute Iron Woman match, which was really, really good. A bunch of great tags, and I think far and away the combination of great in-ring as well as a really gripping story make her my easy number one pick of the year.
All right. Thomas, give me your top 3 for most outstanding.
All right. Yeah, this was a category that I think just because of Empty Arena, I haven't hated it as much as most people, but it's just not peaked very high. I think no one would really argue with that no one really spoke to me, and so I kind of just went almost strictly just off of my ratings. So number 3 for me is a familiar name. It's Yuji Okabayashi. I think he makes my list pretty much every year. Just my type of wrestler, a big guy, that beats the shit out of other big guys. He's had some great singles matches this year in 0-1 in Big Japan, and then also he had that great 30-minute draw in 0-1 that got hyped back in March, and also a Big Japan title challenge with Yuji Okabayashi or with Shigehiro Irie against Sekimoto and Kohei Sato, which I think I was on this show to talk about, actually, that pair of tag matches that were both really excellent. Number 2 for me is another guy that I think is pretty much on my list every year. That's Kento Miyahara. He's just, I think, in terms of crowd connection, in terms of like getting people excited to watch their matches, he is unparalleled, the best in the world at that. Even though he lost the title, I think he's translated to Empty Arena incredibly well. He had a pair of tag title matches in the early stages of Empty Arena with Akira Francesco against Yankee Tukenju, and then with Yoshitatsu against the Violent Giants that I think were both excellent matches. Not to mention, obviously, already mentioned the Lee match and the Suwama match from earlier this year that were both tremendous stuff. And the number 1 for me, and this is one that I've thought about whether or not he deserves it, but it's got to be Kazuchika Okada for me. And that's tough for me to say because honestly, I've kind of despised his New Japan Cup run. I was by far, I think, the low person on the Nagata match. I thought it was really quite average. In the Hiroma match, I think I'm not terribly high on either. But it's just when you have 2 matches on back-to-back nights that were so good with the Ibushi and Naito matches, obviously I'm talking about, it's just hard to deny that anyone can touch that. I don't think anybody's had 2 matches that can compare, except for I guess maybe Kento with the Lee and Suwama matches are the only one that comes close. And of course you got the Taichi match. Everyone forgets about the Taichi match. That was good stuff too. So yeah, number 1 for me is for now Kazuchika Okada.
All right, Tyler, give me your most outstanding wrestlers.
All right, my most outstanding wrestlers. Number 3, Kenny Omega. I haven't been the biggest fan of his booking, and his star power is seriously decreased since he left New Japan, but the in-ring output has still been really, really good, including the tag match he and Page had against the Young Bucks at Revolution in February, which I gave 5 stars. It wasn't quite as good as the Golden Lovers Bucks match, but it was still excellent, and proof that even with the booking and kind of being stuck in the tag team realm in AEW, he's still top notch. Number 2, Kazuchika Okada. I really wish he would learn to adapt his style to Empty Arena, because he keeps trying to have these drawn out epics, and I'm really starting to see why people get frustrated with watching his matches, because in the Empty Arena atmosphere, it just feels like the same thing. It's just going through the motions. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and then he's choking people out. Even so, 2 5-star matches at the beginning of the year at Wrestle Kingdom. And then he had a really good match against Taichi on the New Beginning tour. And his empty arena matches have still been good, even if they were not up to the level that we normally see from Okada. Number one, Hiromu Takahashi. His match against Will Ospreay was incredible. And then he followed it up with a surprisingly really good tag match in Liger's last match with Ryu Lee. And then they had an absolute banger at New Beginning in Osaka, which I went 4 3/4. And then his empty arena has been really good. The match against Ishii was fantastic. He dragged a 4-star match out of Hanma. And then I am the highest person in the world on it, but I thought the Hiromu Yano match was a 4.5-star match, and that was one of my favorite matches I've ever seen. He's been the best wrestler in the world so far this year, and I don't think it's relatively close.
All right. For my most outstanding wrestlers, a lot of these were covered already. I went with Naito in third. He has a 5-star with Okada for me. The 4.25 with Kenta. And it's just been a very light year, and I haven't watched a ton of stuff. Ricardo almost talked me into going Shingo instead. It's really close. Maybe I'll put them tied. I don't know. But they both had a good start to their year. Second place, I would go with Go Shiozaki. 4 3/4 title win over Kaito. The 4.5-star empty arena match with Fujita. 4-star title loss tag title loss on January 5th. I just think his work has been really great. So Go Shiozaki second, and Hiromu Takahashi first. 2 4 3/4-star matches with Ospreay and Ryu Lee. Another 4 1/4 with empty arena match with Honma of all people. So it's definitely been Hiromu's year so far for me. So those are my top 3 or 4, I guess, if you want to count that I chickened out on third there and tied Naito and Shingo. All right, so match of the year will be next. Andy, what do you have here for your 2020 match of the year so far?
Awesome. My number 3 match of the year, I think I have a bunch of matches that are kind of tied for number 3 at 4.5 stars, something like 6 or 7 of them. And my number 3, I kind of just weighed, maybe a little bit recent, as it was a recent watch. It's fresh in my head. But I just watched this week, and this was Katsuhiko Nakajima versus Shotaro Hoshino from February 12th in Wrestle 1. This was Nakajima's only successful defense of the title. And really just 2 of my favorite wrestlers, suplexing each other, kicking each other, chopping each other, brawled a little bit on the outside, just kind of like an awesome match that I guess is probably Wrestle 1's last truly great match. So good way for that promotion to go out, I suppose. My number 2 match, I posted about this last week in the Voices of Wrestling Slack, and actually I know I did get I think Thomas and Taylor at least to watch this match, but this just happened about a week ago as we talked, just over a week ago, and this is from St. Louis Anarchy and Journey Pro. They did a free YouTube match. I think it was supposed to be on Independent Wrestling TV initially, but this is a 60-minute Iron Man match where they're opening up donations to charity, and this is between Jeremy Wyatt and Fred Yehai. It's 60 minutes. It's American indie wrestling. It's basically empty arena. They have like trainees or something along the ringside, but their pace that they keep for the 60 minutes is really good. They're probably 2 of my maybe 5 to 10 favorite independent wrestlers active, and they really knocked it out of the park. There's blood, there's brawling, there's a lot of technical wrestling. It's just worked in this really kind of unique way that you don't see too much in indie wrestling anymore. So I really, really love that match. And it's kind of a perfect Andy match, if that makes sense for those people who know me. And my number 1, I think, will probably be shared by a lot of people. I think this is the best New Japan match since Okada Shibata, whether or not you'd agree with me. I think this is far and away the best match of the year. And that is Okada versus Naito. I understand some people don't like that as much as they like Okada Ibushi. We don't need to get in that conversation, but I think this one is really a true New Japan classic. So Okada versus Naito. There you go.
All right. Go ahead, Paul. Give me your top 3 for match of the year.
Yeah, so my number 3 is Hiroki Goto versus Shingo Takagi. from New Beginning in Sapporo. That is Shingo's never title win. I think that match is almost a little bit forgotten at this stage because so much has happened since then, I suppose. But I thought that match was just tremendous, just hard-hitting action like you would expect from those two, and just going non-stop, just beating the shit out of each other, and just a tremendous moment as well for Shingo winning a big singles title in New Japan and just establishing himself as a proper heavyweight and as one of the top guys in the company. Then my number 2 is Mei Suruga versus Asuka from the 23rd of May. So that match kind of it's kind of a very special match as well. It's Asuka was great friends with Hana Kimura, and Hana Kimura's suicide happened the day before this match happened, and apparently Emi Sakura rang Asuka up the morning and told her, and she wanted to ask her, like, and she wanted to tell her that, like, obviously, like, she doesn't need to come if she doesn't want to, and she apparently just told her right away before Emi could even say anything that she wants to do the match. And you could kind of see at the start that Asuka seemed a bit off, but then once the match got going, she got really, really into it, and it was almost it was therapeutic. It was therapeutic for her, but I think it was also therapeutic for the audience, and it definitely was therapeutic for me as well, because just it was kind of a weird situation where it just felt kind of unreal and just felt kind of numb, and just kind of watching this match kind of helped kind of come to terms with it as well. And just kind of, even without all of that context, it's just a damn great match, just even without that, where May just bounces around Asuka like a ball of energy and just tries to wear her down somehow, and just at one point just hits her full force in the face with a candlestick. And then Asuka just getting progressively just fed up with May's antics, and then just starts viciously beating her down halfway through the match, and then ultimately neither of them is like managing to get a win, and it ends in a time limit draw. And yeah, just a great match, kind of both kind of from a therapy aspect as well as kind of from a match aspect. And then my number 1 is Tetsuya Naito versus Kazuchika Okada from Wrestle Kingdom Night 2. I think maybe what kind of became apparent kind of from the previous match as well is the thing I value above all else is an emotional connection to the match, and there just wasn't anything else that like came close in like emotional connection in this match. It has been built up for such a long time, this entire Naito storyline that has been going on for years, where he tried as Stardust Genius and he failed. He got voted out of the main event as Stardust Genius. He tried as Tranquilo LIJ Naito, and he still failed. So finally he just comes back, and he kind of feels like that this is likely like his last chance at greatness. This is like, it's do or die now. And what was kind of, I think for me, kind of the key storyline like throughout like all of the matches was like him trying to hit the Stardust press and failing every single time. And I think some speculation was that he wasn't even going to go for the Stardust press in this match, and that would be how he finally wins it. But no, instead he just points to the turnbuckle, jumps up and does it. He just goes up and he does it and he wins. And I think that was kind of even more overcoming it, where previously maybe like he just wanted to be kind of this Stardust Genius person and hit this move, and he was kind of unsure of himself when he hit it previously, whereas here he just went up and he just did it and fuck it. And that just overall, like the whole story was just tremendous, and then obviously the reaction in the arena and I think around the world was just one of elation when Naito finally managed to do it and just finally managed to win that title and overcome Okada and just become an even greater star than he was previously.
All right. Taylor, what do you got here for match of the year?
Are we skipping Ricardo?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ricardo. Go ahead.
Don't worry, Ricardo. I'm looking at
It's been a long 2 hours of recording, I guess. Sorry.
No problem. Number 3 is Ibushi versus Okada from Wrestle Kingdom Night 1. Just a tremendous match, full of drama, full of intensity and high-hitting action. I went 5 stars. Number 2 is, and I'm heartbroken that Andy didn't mention this one, is Villano Tercero Jr. versus Aéreo, mask versus mask match in Ciudad Juárez. This was an absolute masterpiece and one of the best lucha matches of the last 10 years. This was high drama. This had intensity. This was a savage storytelling device. This rewarded you for following the history of lucha, for having watched Atlantis versus Villano Tercero, the historic match from 2000, March 2000. This was full of escalation, of drama. Every fall mattered. The first fall with Aéreo establishing his style, trying to humiliate Villano Tercero Jr. by making him submit with La Atlántida, which was the same submission hold that made his father lose his mask 20 years ago. Then we've got a bunch of incredible brawling, people flying out of structures. This was an incredible match. I wrote a long piece for voicesofwrestling.com. It has a divisive finish, but I think it was pitch perfect. It pushed Villano Tercero Jr. to be one of the must-see young luchadors in Mexico right now, and just another round incredible drama and high-intensity match. If you haven't seen it, it's almost 1 hour long, but I really encourage you to watch it. And that number 1 is Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito from Wrestle Kingdom. This was just a masterpiece. This was professional wrestling made art in its highest form, highest quality of entertainment, a match full of storytelling that rewarded me for following the company, for following Naito's story, and just a match that made me cry, and one match that I will never forget. Just an incredible masterpiece.
It definitely made me cry too, honestly. Not ashamed to admit that. I think we're 3 for 3 so far for Naito Okada. I kind of have a feeling Taylor's going to break it, but let's see if Taylor does or not. Go ahead, Taylor.
So my number 3 pick, we've talked a lot about how the empty arena stuff has been tough. It's been tough for me at times, but there have been highlights, so I wanted one match on here. I don't know that this would finish in a top 10 as number 3, but my number 3, am choosing Go Shiozaki versus Kazuyuki Fujita from Noah.
That is an awesome match.
March 29th. I just think I did watch it live, and it was just such an experience of. It felt very much sort of like a cultural moment in terms of, in the Voices of Wrestling Slack, everyone was talking about it. Everyone on Twitter was talking about it all at the same time as it was happening live. And it was sort of this wild, just sort of communal experience that I feel like in many ways doesn't often happen with live wrestling. A lot of New Japan shows happen late at night, so some people stay up and watch them, some people watch them later, so there's really never a moment when everyone's together, and things like that. And obviously WWE is producing negative cultural moments, so we won't include that. But it was just a super fun match, just super wild, unexpected. I mean, Fujita guzzling hand sanitizer will probably be one of the moments that will stick out for me for years to come in this match.
I gotta say something about this. This was like Saturday night into Sunday, right? Eastern time for us.
Yeah.
I watched this live too. I think, and here's why I say I think, because I looked at the calendar to make sure. This is when I had fucking COVID, probably. So if you want an experience, not just watch this live. Like while recovering from the coronavirus. That's really quite the experience. But probably part of the reason why I both will never forget it and don't remember some parts of it that well, because I was probably that was the first night when I first started to feel better. I would say right after the peak of the peak of the illness was probably Wednesday through Friday for me. So it was really something. So
I mean, it's the first time Noah was talked about on a grand scale in a half decade. I mean, it was definitely the most talked about Noah match in forever, whether or not you love it or hate it. I mean, had people who haven't watched Noah in years watch that match, or at least were participating in the conversation. It was totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely, like I said, maybe wouldn't be my number 3 match of the year if I were doing a larger list, but wanted to get it on as sort of a representation of the positive of the empty arena era. My number 2 match is Mei Hoshizuki versus Maria from Marvelous on January 19th. This ties in with my most outstanding wrestler, Mei Hoshizuki, has been great. Maria has been right there, maybe just below her. Just a match of 2 young competitors. I think combined, Hoshizuki and Maria have maybe 4 years in the business, maybe a little bit less. But just 2 young wrestlers going out 100%, going as fast as they can, 100% effort, just a feeling of a true fight, which I really loved. I really went into this match not expecting all that much. It's the opening match of the show, and it blew me away. And my number 1 match, John was right. I will be the outlier here and pick from just making it in from June 30th, 2020, Yuna Mizumori versus Emi Sakura from Choco Pro number 28. As I talked about in the Best Feud, Mizumori involved in the big overarching storyline of Choco Pro, and this was sort of, at this point, you think maybe it might go on. This is sort of the big conclusion. Mizumori finally getting a match against Emi Sakura. She actually had to leave the promotion briefly in order for Sakura to agree to a match, coming back and having a last woman standing match. Just a lot of emotion, some great moves. Emi Sakura pulling out moves that she hasn't done in many, many years, like the ice driver, which she usually never does. So high stakes, high emotions, big time story, and some great action at Ichigawa Chocolate Square. So that is my far and away number 1 match of the year.
All right. Go ahead, Thomas. Give me your match of the year picks.
All right. Number 3 for me is a match that I was a little upset Andy didn't pick. It was Go Shiozaki versus Kaito Kiyomiya from Noah's New Sunrise on January 4th. Just an awesome start to the year for Noah. A surprising result that I don't think many people saw coming. I think everyone thought Go Shiozaki was kind of a token defense for Kaito, and he pulled the upset and went on to have what has been, I think, a very good title run so far. Despite, I think, a lot of Noah's failings in Empty Arena, I think the Go title matches have been the highlights.
Both you and Ricardo were so disappointed in me. Those were both my 4 and 5. So
yeah.
They did round out my top 5.
There you go. No, I'm not. And then number 2 for me. So actually, literally yesterday, I watched the Aereo versus Viana 3 Jr. match that Ricardo talked about earlier, and it was such a good match. I had it at number 4 on my list after watching it. And I was like, man, I just really wanted this to be in my top 3. And I had Kazuchika Okada versus Kota Ibushi sitting at number 2. And it was a match that has not gotten nearly as much universal praise as the Okada Naito match. I was like, you know what? It could have been, rose-colored glasses. I watched it. And I think the early stages were slow. I wouldn't use the word boring, which I think is kind of the separator between me and some of the people that are slightly lower on the match. But the second half of the match is just incredible stuff. And, the finishing stretch is probably the best I've seen this year. Just incredible drama throughout the back half of that match. And I had to keep it at number 2. I couldn't give AAA the nod, but they get my honorable mention at number 4. And then number 1 for me has to be Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito from Wrestle Kingdom Night 2, January 5th. All 3 of my top 3 matches come in a 2-day span on January 4th and January 5th, which I thought was funny. But yep, I mean, I will make it. Was it like 4 out of 5 for Okada Naito? Just, I think one of the more clear match of the years that we've had in recent years. Yeah.
All right, Tyler.
All right. My number 3 match is one that we can debate whether it's a match or not. I have the Stadium Stampede match from Double or Nothing.
It's a match.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought it was fantastic. One of the things that AEW has done a really good job of establishing is that little things matter. One of the reasons why I started to fall in love with New Japan when I started watching is anything that you see or hear throughout every show matters somewhere down the line. Like we just saw with Naito finally getting his big win at Wrestle Kingdom. It was kind of a 7 to 8 year story arc of him finally getting that moment. And with the little things in Stadium Stampede, you got payoffs from segments on Being the Elite. You got payoffs from different matches and moments throughout Dynamite and even AEW Dark. I thought it was very well done. I thought even though the Matt Hardy stuff was kind of bad and hokey, I really popped when they did the matter of fact bit, kind of like the Matt Hardy version 2.0 circa 2003. I thought that was a really fun callback. And just the stuff with Adam Page and then finishing off with Omega doing the one-winged angel like 20 feet high, even though it was onto a crash pad, I thought was awesome. My number 2 match of the year, Hiromu Takahashi and Will Ospreay from Wrestle Kingdom. Probably Ospreay is kind of like the king of the gifs. There's a lot of different sequences he does that are easily gifable and that you'll see pop up online. And the one where he gets thrown through the ropes and then comes back out with the Sasuke special was one of the best moments of Wrestle Kingdom for me. And Hiromu having to bust out Time Bomb 2 in order to get the victory over Ospreay, I thought was a nice little touch, kind of graduating Will up to the heavyweights, making him look strong on his way out of the junior division. And then number 1, there's really not much more I can say about it. It's Okada Naito. I think one of my favorite little quips from the match was at the end, and Okada's walking away from the ring, and then Naito asked him how his main event was, and then that they should do it again. And Okada just raises a fist, kind of culminating the moment. And then you got the turn of the angle of the year with Kenta, and it was just very well done.
Thomas, you need to mute yourself. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me or if you stepped away. Okay. Anyway, my match of the year picks for 2020 so far, I went with Hiromu Takahashi versus Ryu Lee from New Japan, February 9th in 3rd. Like I said earlier, I seem to love that match way more than almost anybody, but the two of them slapping each other at the start for like almost 10 straight minutes, I just thought was fucking awesome, and I love the rest of the match too. So 3rd place for me, easy pick there. 2nd, I went with Kaito Kiyomiya versus Go Shiozaki from Noah on January 4th. And, again, these were all covered. These two especially were covered, earlier. But definitely an awesome match. And 1st place, my only 5-star match of the year so far. And I will echo what Andy said much earlier. It is the best New Japan match since Okada Shibata in 2017. That is Tetsuya Naito versus Kazuchika Okada. New Japan Pro Wrestling, January 5th, Tokyo Dome. I've watched the match like 6 times or something, and so I understand the idea that you need to be emotionally connected with the match and blah 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 blah, and I clearly was emotionally connected. I just gripping my phone. I watched it live, and I just remember sitting there like 5 a.m. or whatever, like gripping my phone like so fucking hard it was gonna like pass into my skin, like the penny in that of Homer Simpson in that episode. But it was just an incredible match though. Like I really think it's held up every time I've rewatched it, even without that same kind of raw emotional connection of following the Naito story and seeing it come to an end in real time. So it's an incredible match. Naito's selling was especially just incredible in that match. There's a moment towards the end, where after Okada had worked over the knee for a while, where Naito hits the Destino on Okada, and he has to do a pretty standard spot, which is like sell your body part so you can't make the cover, and the guy kicks out. And so many wrestlers nowadays do that spot, incredibly corny and over the top in a bad way. And he, just clutches the knee for like maybe half a second, makes it very clear that the thing hurts without making it look stupid and over the top, and then goes to do the cover. It might be the best version of that spot I've ever seen. So, he's always been really good at like bumping and selling, but also selling in a way that like can draw you in without being super fucking corny, like so much of wrestling selling is nowadays. So, I just wanted to highlight that one spot of it, especially because I think it really highlights what he did well in that match. And Okada was awesome too, not to take anything away from him. I mean, he was, I think it was his best performance since that Shibata match for sure. So, there you go. Match of the year. Tag Team of the Year. We only got 2 of these left now. This is a hard. I don't know about anybody else, but this was the hardest category for me personally. I don't think there's been many great tag teams, especially in stuff that I actually watch. So, Andy, what'd you put here for Tag Team of the Year?
Yeah, a lot of the categories are hard. This one was hard too, but it was kind of helped due to some conversations we've had in the last couple of days. And you may see other content on VOW in the coming weeks about kind of the tag team scene right now. But I did settle on 3. Number 1 was easy for me. Number 2 and 3 could really been interchangeable. For number 3, I did settle on Axis. That's Katsuhiro Nakajima and Go Shiozaki, which I know Joe, when I kind of said that, Joe Lanza was pretty surprised since him and a lot of other people were so down on the tag league. But I did include a couple of 6-man or 8-man tags that they were also part of. But really, I think even within the tag league, they were the highlights. And in a year really devoid of good tag team wrestling, the fact that they have multiple matches on the old spreadsheet means that they're pretty good. And I am biased towards the 2 members, Shiozaki and Nakajima, but I do find their matches to be really engaging. Number 2, this is also sort of a cheat, but not really. It is Strong Hearts. That's T-Hawk and El Lindemann, but I am also including some Damn Hearts. That's including Tetsuya Endo. I just think even if they haven't had as many matches that I've seen, or even the highest of highs, I think what they provide as a team is so refreshing. The 2 of them have the whole year and even last year have just been like working at this incredible pace when they're in the ring, where even if their matches under-deliver occasionally, I'm always like so excited when they're on a show. So I can't help but put them at number 2. And my number 1 tag team of the year is the current KOD tag team champions. That's Nautilus. That's Yuki Ueno and Naomi Yoshimura. And there's a couple of young guys who neither of them on their own, I think, are like spectacular generational talents or anything. But I think they've just put together some really strong matches. And it's just fun to have kind of a young tag team wrestling all over the place. So they are my number 1, Nautilus.
So my number 3 tag team of the year was the Jin team of Jake Lee and Koji Iwamoto. Not that they had any kind of specific great match. They just had like a series of very, very solid matches in All Japan. Held the All Asia tag team titles for a good part of the year, and then otherwise just had like a series of very, very good matches. Then they lost the title to actually my number 2 team of the year, that is Yankee to Kenju, where they've had a great Big Japan tag team match earlier in the year against Koei Sato and Daisuke Sekimoto, as well as winning the All Asia tag titles, as I mentioned, from Jake Lee and Koji Iwamoto, and then had a number of very good defenses on the All Japan shows over the past couple of weeks. And then for my number 1 team, I actually did some late research because I saw a bunch of people kind of hyping up Nautilus. So actually, I watched their kind of hyped up matches, and I can confirm that they're also my tag team of the year so far. Their matches have been very good. They have a very good kind of basic composition of the tag team of a big guy and not a little guy, but a smaller guy, which always makes for a very good dynamic of the matches. And I think that their title win against Damnation probably is the best tag match that I've seen so far this year. And that just makes them like the best tag team of the year so far.
All right. Ricardo, give me your tag team of the year picks.
Again, this was very difficult. If we could have trios, I would have voted for Los Jinetes del Aire on.
No, you can vote for trios.
Okay. So I'm gonna change things a bit. Honorable mentions would be Chango and Kaji Tomato, and the Strong Hearts. I really, really love the Strong Hearts matches in 2020, but there haven't been many of them. So I have to go with number 3 to Los Jinetes del Aire, El Hijo del Vikingo, Mysticis Jr. and Octagon Jr. They've been having some very fun matches in AAA during the first 3 months of the year against Los Mercenarios, against the Nuevo Poder del Norte, against Australian Suicide and Villano. So yeah, they've been very, very fun. Number 2 would be Nautilus. Again, Andy and Paul already talked about them. They've been fantastic. Their match against the Strong Hearts at Peter Pan is probably one of my favorites empty arena matches so far, and just all around fun tag team, great chemistry, and they were also very fun in empty arena setting. And my tag team of the year, I'm sorry, John, is Hangman Page and Kenny Omega.
Thank you for apologizing first.
I think they have been fantastic. Their Young Bucks match, their SCU match at the Jericho Cruise or whatever. I don't know. I have really enjoyed their output. They have one very good match against the Lucha Brothers, against SCU, the Young Bucks at the Stadium Stampede. Whenever they were on screen together, it was electric. So they have great chemistry and they have been a blast to watch. This gives
me a chance to plug the Patreon again, because I talked all about the Kenny Omega and Hangman Page versus Young Bucks match on our latest.
You buried, right?
I don't know if I buried it. I mean, buried is probably too strong. I definitely buried elements of it. So you can hear all about it. Patreon.com/Wrestling Omakase, which is it was the latest exclusive episode with me and Nate from Everything Elite. He picked that match. He picked it as a fan vote pick, and the fans decided they wanted to hear my thoughts on it, which, you can definitely check it out. $5 a month, and you'll be able to hear all about what I thought of that match. Taylor, give me your tag team of the year picks.
So my number 3 tag team from Choco Pro is the Best Bros tag team of Balian Aki and Mei Saruga. I think they've had a fun year. They have really fun chemistry, and they've had a lot of good matches. My number 2, Strong Hearts, already sort of been covered from DDT. They've had a number of, I think, fun matches that I've enjoyed, and in its sort of down year, that helps get them near the top. And my number 1, no apology to John, is the One-Winged Cowboys of Kenny Omega and Adam Page. As Ricardo just said, a lot of great matches this year. So to me, they were an obvious number 1 pick.
Thomas, what are your picks for tag team of the year?
All right. Number 3 for me is, I kind of cheated a little bit. Like people have said, it's been a hard year for tag teams. My number 3 was Asami Kodaka and X.
What?
Okay, hear me out, John. Asami Kodaka for me has had a 4-star or higher rated tag match with 6 different partners so far this year, which I thought was kind of insane. With Yuko Miyamoto, Ryuichi Sakai, Minoru Fujita, Daiki Shimomura, Toshiyuki Sakuda, and Takuya Nomura, all in separate matches, which I thought was kind of an insane accomplishment. So I wanted to give him a credit there for having great matches with 6 different partners. And if you made me pick a real number 3, it would probably be Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. But I mean, I want to go with Asami Kodaka and X for the for number 3. Number 2 for me, Andy mentioned them. I thought I might be able to sneak in and be the only one that gave them a shout. But it's Strong Hearts. They're just such a refreshing team, and they can go, and they're great, but they're also like fun to watch, and Lindemann is hilarious. And yeah, Strong Hearts, and also if you include the Damn Hearts, the trio of Lindemann, T-Hawk, and Tetsuya Endo, that even adds to their case. And then number 1 for me, I thought maybe this could be a unique pick, but it seems to be kind of a consensus number 1 and number 2. It's Nautilus of Naomi Yoshimura and Yuki Ueno. A great matches against Strong Hearts, a great match at the beginning of the year against Daisuke Sasaki and Soma Takao. Some great trios matches as they held the trios titles earlier this year with, I believe, Hiroshima. And yeah, DDT has been killing it in terms of the tag division and the trios division this year. I think Eruption would probably be a top 5 group for me as well. That's the group of Saki Akai, Kazusada Higuchi, and Yukio Sakaguchi. So yeah, DDT dominating tag team of the year, but also Asami Kodaka and X.
All right. Tyler, give me your picks here for tag team of the year. Tyler?
All right. My number 3 tag team of the year is... Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. My number 3 tag team of the year is Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Even with WWE and especially NXT really being a big pile of shit, O'Reilly and Fish are still a great tag team, and they've had some really good matches, including one against the Broserweights from NXT TakeOver in Portland. And especially in a weak tag team year, you're gonna see a team like this who's just consistently good be able to rise up a little higher. Number 2, 2AW's Kaiji Tomato and Chango. I never thought I would be here watching 2AW matches, but they had a couple really good ones for those tag team titles during the real heavy portion of the shutdown. And then number 1, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Their dynamic as a team is very weird. They're eventually going to break up, especially with Hangman not considering himself part of the Elite. And then we're going to get a Hangman Page and Kenny Omega feud, which will be really, really good. And then the matches have just been fantastic, especially the one that we talked about a couple times already, them against the Young Bucks, which, as John mentioned, that they just talked about on a 5-match episode with Nate from Everything Elite. That was a 5-star match for me, and it was very well built, great pacing, and it was a moves match, which also told the story, which for me will always hit.
Told a stupid story. Anyway. Sorry, I didn't say that.
I totally forgot the takeover in my hometown. I have not seen that, nor did I go to it. So, only main event to happen here, and totally forgot. So I'll have to check that out.
All right. So my picks for tag team of the year. Number 3, I have Chango and Kaiji Tomato they're the Empty Arena Kings from 2AW. I really enjoyed a lot of their Empty Arena stuff during their tag title reign. It's a weak year, though, so there you go. I put Roppongi 3K in second. I don't even really remember why I did that. I guess I did because they've had some good matches. I don't know. The junior tag title match with Rocky and Taguchi I really liked from Korakuen. I don't know. It's a terrible year. And I put Natalius in first. It is sad that Yuki Ueno and Naomi Yoshimura are finally getting their big run into the middle of COVID. But what can you do? The really great match they have with Chihiro and Yuki Ino put them over the top for me, again, in a really weak year. So, we're at our last category here, of course, which is Wrestler of the Year, also called the Flair Feds and the Observer. You're supposed to consider drawing, more easier said than done in this year, MVP quality and in-ring. That's pretty much the criteria. So let's see. Why don't we'll start with Andy. Go ahead. Your Wrestler of the Year picks for 2020 so far.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I always have a issue or problem kind of separating them because I don't really pay attention to drawing too often. I understand its validity and all that, but I have a hard time following things as closely as some people in that regard. But I do know, again, like we talked about earlier, that the second biggest show of the year and the biggest show in Japan was Wrestle Kingdom. 14, day 1, and that was headlined by Kazuchika Okada and Kota Ibushi, and Okada also headlined day 2 with Tetsuya Naito, and I think for that alone, and just kind of him always, being high up there in a year with very little attendance, he's my number 3. My number 2 is Shotaro Ashino, and this is because I think just because of the talk, I kind of took it as in an era where we had 3 months really of like not really any fans present, so no drawing power, who was being talked about, and at least in my circles, the most. And for someone who always kind of was on the periphery because he was in Wrestle 1, and he was awesome in Wrestle 1 for years, but that's kind of a lower promotion to a lot of people. The excitement about his run in All Japan really brought a lot of people together, and so I gave him number 2 in kind of a tricky way. Because he was my number 1, just because he's been my favorite wrestler of the year. He's not necessarily a certified draw, although again he did have a really hot angle in Wrestle 1. Is Katsuhiko Nakajima. They shuffled him out of the main title picture scene and put him in the national title picture scene for Noah, and I just think he's been kind of the glue holding my favorite promotion together. He doesn't really have any drawing power right now. He might even have negative drawing power since promotion went out of business after he won the title, basically. Not his fault, but he is my number 1 overall.
All right. Paul, give me your picks here for Wrestler of the Year.
Yep. So with my number 3, I kind of went a bit of a weird one, I suppose. I kind of mostly threw out drawing power on this one. It has an overall very good match quality as well, but I think in this one I kind of went with an emerging star power, if that makes sense. So I went with Show on this one, where I think this really is even with the long break that New Japan took, this appears to be kind of his breakout year, where he kind of started off well, kind of winning yet another junior heavyweight title, a tag title with Yo, but really kind of since New Japan, but even then, it seemed like he was poised for greater things this year. And now that New Japan has come back from its break, it's very apparent that they are going to push this guy to the moon. So that's why I went with him as my number 3. My number 2 is Jon Moxley, where he's clearly the ace of AEW now. And he has been drawing well early on, I suppose, in the year. Drawing is kind of hard to estimate now. But he has been drawing well on pay-per-view as well. So I think he is very clearly the ace. So he's drawing, he has the star power, and his matches, from what I've seen, have been pretty good, as well as his matches in New Japan. We can't forget about those as well, where he kind of has been their cornerstone, as he is technically still the US champion. They still haven't stripped him, so I assume they still have some hope that they will be able to do something with him going forward. And my number 1 was a very, very easy one. It's Tetsuya Naito. I mean, if we're going by drawing, he's really the only one that has a record there. It's obviously kind of debatable for night 1 on how much he drew that, but he was at the very least in the semi-main, so he definitely did contribute to it. Then obviously night 2, and then him selling out selling out Osaka Joe Hall at New Beginning in Osaka against Kenta. So 3 drawing records there, excellent matches on top of that, and then star power obviously is through the roof. So a very easy Wrestler of the Year vote there.
All right, Ricardo, what do you got here for Wrestler of the Year?
Yeah, this was very, very tricky. I guess I was gonna go with Kenny Omega, but I'm not sure about his drawing power since he isn't main eventing. So number 3, I'm going with Naruki Doi. I think it's been a very uneven year for Dragon Gate, but he's been there. He's been consistent. The shows have been selling well. He's been a great in-ring performer and has that MVP quality. Number 2 is Psycho Clown, the ace of AAA. He was fantastic in Lucha Fighter and all all of the first AAA shows of the year drew well, and he has always been dumb and very fun to watch. It's Psycho Clown, very consistent, and a good guy to draw people to your shows. And number one, again, very easy decision, Tetsuya Naito. He main evented with the biggest show of the year, had one of the best matches of all time, in my opinion. And, well, he also drew well in the New Beginning shows, which he headlined with Kenta. So, yeah, Naito, easy wrestler of the year for me.
All right. Taylor, I guess you're going to also break that Naito streak. I think I already know who your wrestler of the year pick is, honestly, based on what you said earlier.
Well, I guess I'll lead off by saying one of my favorite things about the COVID period has been not talking about drawing. It's one of the most boring things to me in my life, but I did play along for the most part. So number 3, I had Masato Tanaka, was the champion of DDT, had some good matches. DDT had some fairly good crowds. It's a top company. So I think he did fairly well. So he was my number 3 pick. My number 2 pick from Stardom is Mayu Iwatani. I think she had a really great year. Probably, if I was ranking the top 10 wrestlers, she would probably make it in in the 8 to 10 range. But Stardom had a great beginning of the year in terms of, you could probably give some of the credit to Bushi Road, but Mayu, to me, is the ace of Stardom, and Stardom had a really strong year in terms of buzz and attendance. Not their fault that we went into this strange lockdown period. So Mayu Iwatani would be my number 2. And number 1, I didn't care. Drawing, who cares? I went again with Yuna Mizumori, someone who I just think deserves being rewarded as someone who started sort of pre-COVID, pre-empty arena as just sort of at least to me personally, just another wrestler in Gato Move. Very good. I did like her, but sort of, I would guess, consider her a mid-carder as much as you can consider someone in a tiny company like that a mid-carder. But someone who has taken this period and, to me, really made themselves into a star in the span of about 4 months. And really, at least in the circles that I travel in, has created a lot of buzz about herself. So she would be my number 1 pick.
All right. Thomas, give me your rest of the year picks.
All right. Yeah, this is obviously a tough one just because we don't have a lot of drawing data to go on. Number 3 for me is Yuji Okabayashi. I think it's clear that he's probably the biggest draw on the Japanese independents. 0-1 brought him in for a title challenge on their biggest show of the year. Obviously a big spot to give to an outsider. 2AW gave him their title for a few months, which is obvious. And then obviously Big Japan, he's a big player there. So when 3 different promotions value you as a top guy, I think that can say that you're probably a pretty certified draw. And also he's been just a tremendous wrestler. I think a top 3 guy in the world in terms of just purely in ring. Number 2 for me, wrestler of the year, Masato Tanaka from DDT and 0-1, which Taylor mentioned earlier. He came in, was DDT's champion through pretty much the entire first half of the year, built a long storyline culminating at Peter Pan, which I praised earlier. And DDT's universe subscriptions went up during COVID, which obviously didn't necessarily have to be the case. I think a lot of people might have been, cracking down on what they're spending money on, and instead their subscriptions went up. And I think you have to give some of the credit to the champion who was having a title match probably every other week on the TV show. So you have to give him a lot of that credit. And the number 1,
excuse me, give the credit to Ironhead Fujita for the DDT subscription.
Right, of course. Because Noah got added, right? So it was all. Yes. It couldn't have been anyone else. Had to have been the hand sanitizer man. Number 1, it's got to be Kazuchika Okada. Just kidding. It's Tetsuya Naito. And people can say that Okada drew the 70,000 over 2 days. I mean, it was Naito, and you could see it from the reactions. You could see it from the T-shirts people were wearing. I mean, it was clear that Tetsuya Naito was the draw. Tetsuya Naito's big challenge was the thing that got people to buy tickets. And he's just had a tremendous year. I loved the Kenta match and the Kenta angle. And, I mean, I'm sure Dominion will do very well. I would be willing to bet it's probably already sold out. But without even a challenger.
It is sold out, yeah.
Without even a challenger announcement.
Yeah.
So,
I don't.
yeah.
And by the way, I don't think the New Japan Cup final is sold out yet. So it's not just that they're auto selling out with the small.
Okada's on top of that.
Yeah.
Didn't sell out. On top of Dominion, which did sell out.
Yeah.
I think that's my case for Naito over Okada as Wrestler of the Year.
Tyler, what do you got here for Wrestler of the Year picks?
All right, I actually changed mine up a little bit just by listening to some of you guys talk earlier. I changed my number 3 from Kenny Omega to Jon Moxley, and his run with the title and the build up to his match at Revolution, and the supposedly really good pay-per-view buy with him in the co-main event on top of Double or Nothing, and then his feud with Suzuki, and then his 2 U.S. title matches at Wrestle Kingdom really put him in this spot for me. Number 2 is Kenta. I have absolutely loved Kenta's year. His match with Goto was really good. The angle and just the massive heat that he drew with Naito, and then selling out Osaka-jo Hall for that title match, which was also really good, as was mentioned earlier. And then number 1 is Tetsuya Naito. Everybody packed the dome because they wanted to see Naito win the 2 belts, have his moment, and finally culminate that 7-year story arc that has been playing out in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then, as I mentioned with Kenta, he was the main reason why the Osaka-jo Hall sold out. Kenta obviously played a good role in it, but people love Naito. And not only that, his drawing ability, but he's been New Japan's MVP. His matches have been great. He's just been everything that they need right now. And he's my number 1.
So my number 3 is also Jon Moxley, which might surprise some people. It just seems to me like fans are really into his run. As Tyler just mentioned, both the AEW pay-per-views that he either headlined or co-headlined seem to have done very good buy rates. I was especially surprised that Double or Nothing held up so well in the COVID, and he was not in the main event, I don't believe, but there was still like the co-main event. So good, and that was with a pretty weak challenger. I think most people would agree. So good job from Moxley, and I actually like his New Japan stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, I love the match with Suzuki. I thought his match with Lance Archer was really good too. But this is definitely more for the fact that he seems to be, drawing on top as well as you can as AEW champion. Number 2, I went with Go Shiozaki. I thought selling out the Korakuen opposite Wrestle Kingdom was really impressive, honestly, especially Wrestle Kingdom that did like 40,000 people. So, and he just seems, again, like he's at the absolute top of his game. I mentioned all his stuff during Most Outstanding. It's definitely a guy that I think has that MVP quality for his promotion. And number 1, I of course went with Tetsuya Naito. I think, like I said, I think if anything, it might be a little underrated. Although I honestly didn't expect so many of you to have Naito number 1, so I guess it's not that underrated. But selling out Osaka-jo Hall, a building they used to not sell out for, Dominion at one point, for a New Beginning show, a split tour ender, is such a big deal. Dominion in this COVID era, without even having an opponent, is already sold out, which, as I mentioned, as of a few days ago at least, the New Japan Cup final the night before is not sold out, and I don't know if that's a I don't know if that's changed since then. It could have. I don't think it was that far, but yeah, I mean, like, the fans are still coming out to see him even during COVID, and it's just, he's just the top champion. This is his run, and it's definitely been a weird run given everything happening, but I still think I would give it to him for this half year, and we'll see how the second half of the year goes. All right, folks, so we can finally wrap it up here. Let's go down the line and do some quick plugs. So, Andy, what do you got to plug?
I don't really have anything to plug. I'm not doing much, so thanks for having me on. I think as far as non-wrestling related things to plug, we are living in trying times with the Black Lives Matter movement, with COVID, with everything else. Wear a mask, wash your hands, stay inside, donate money where you can, or at least educate yourself and be smart, and vote for politicians that will help lead this country or your own local jurisdiction in ways that you see fit.
I want to say, because I know what you meant because I know you, but you've been trying times. It's you're supportive of Black Lives Matter.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
the way you said that,
very strong support.
I didn't want anyone to take it otherwise.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Paul, what are your got a plug here? Anything?
Yeah. So actually, I think coming up this week, there's going to be like a metric ton of stuff I'm going to be writing for the site. Going to try to make up for not writing anything during the empty arena stuff, because it's really hard to write about empty arena wrestling.
Oh yeah.
So
hard to podcast about it too.
Yeah. So I'm going to be writing a lot of previews and reviews for the New Japan shows coming up this weekend, and then I'm also going to cover the first All Japan show with fans back, so really looking forward to that. And otherwise, yesterday I recorded an episode of the 5-Star Match Game, Joe Gainey's 5-Star Match Game, with Andrew Rich and Sean as the other contestants on it, where we covered WWE in the 2010s. And
I cannot wait to listen
all I'm going to say on that is tater tots.
I can't wait to listen to that. That's to be coming out on Wednesday. I think I saw that Joe Gagney said that, so probably a day after this comes out on Tuesday. Ricardo, give me your plugs.
First of all, thank you for inviting me, John.
Oh, you had a great time, buddy. I had a great time having you, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. And you can find some of my work at the Voices of Wrestling. If somehow we convince you to watch the Aerial versus Villano match, I have a big piece about it that will complement the experience, and Voices of Wrestling again. And you can find me at Twitter at WallyRGR, WALLYRGR. And you can also, if you somehow know Spanish, you listen to Spanish, you can find my wrestling podcast at Lucha Jobbers. And if you like film, I have a little site with lots of film critiques called La Estatuilla. I'm a Rotten Tomatoes approved critic, so you can find some of my stuff there. And just be good, wear a mask, recycle, and as All
right. Okay.
Andy said, educate yourself. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I think you cut out there for me for a second, but I got it. Taylor, give me your plugs. We have a podcast to plug, first of all.
Yes, as John mentioned at the beginning of the show, I do a podcast on this very Voices of Wrestling network, Jumping Bomb Audio. It's a podcast all about Joshi wrestling. I do with Aaron Bentley, where we cover the entire world of Joshi wrestling in the COVID period. With less shows, we've been actually going back and starting from the beginning, back in 2011, covering show by show Stardom. So if you've been looking to dig into the history of that promotion, we have a number of episodes about that. But as we come back, we're starting to cover shows. We talk about news. We do reviews of pretty much any show that makes tape anywhere. We preview what's coming up so that you know what to watch. And we recommend matches for you to watch that have happened. The next episode will be out next week. It's a bi-monthly podcast, so check that out. And John, thank you as always for having me.
Thanks for coming on, buddy. Thomas, give me your plugs.
Thanks for having me on, John. I don't really have anything to plug other than Jake Lee is good.
Okay. That's all of them. Okay. Tyler, what are your plugs?
John, thank you for having me on. You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealForno. I do some work for Voices of Wrestling with previews, reviews, and the occasional article. I also write about the National Football League, the NFL Draft, and college football for Blue Chip Scouting and Climbing the Pocket. So if you're a fan of the NFL Draft or the Minnesota Vikings, go check those out. I have an article coming out tomorrow morning, Tuesday, about why the NFL draft should modify itself to be more like the Major League Baseball draft. So if you're a draft nerd like myself, it will be a fun read and you'll enjoy it.
All right. And I have to say, Thomas saying Jake Lee is good as his entire plug and then immediately disconnecting because he had to run for something, I guess, is one of the funnier exits in the history of this podcast. So shout out to Thomas. All right, folks. Thank you as always for listening. Next week we'll be back with myself and Mr. Sean Cedar from this very website. We'll be covering the 2 New Japan shows from this weekend, the New Japan Cup Final and Dominion. It'll be interesting seeing New Japan with fans again for the first time since the early March, I believe. So that'll be our topic next week. In the meantime, as always, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Wrestling Omakase. That is the place to go for the next parts of the Okada Tanahashi series. Should be more coming out this week as we look to wrap that up. Plus Anime Omakase, plus 5 matches, etc., etc. So definitely check those out over the next, check that out for $5 a month. You can follow us on Twitter at Wrestle Omakase. Wrestling, of course, would not fit. And folks, we will see you next time. Thank you as always for listening.